Chapter 1100. In front of the heavenly word peak in the red phoenix star zone, demonic clouds surged. Di Mingtian of the scaled race was coming over with killing intent. Under the apricot tree, sensed the incoming enemy with her divine sense, and her expression froze. Is it her? Behind Di Mingtian, the four red dust realm experts' eyes flashed coldly. They never thought that the famous Western King hairpin would be in the hands of a half-step red dust realm girl. Kill! Di Mingtian waved his hand, and the four red dust realm cultivators flew out. Their powerful beast Qi mercilessly threatened Di Mingtian's life. Under the apricot tree, stood up and raised her right hand. Heaven and earth raged. On the heavenly word peak, spiritual Qi rapidly gathered, forming a barrier in front of them. With a rumble, four powerful palms shook heaven and earth. However, the barrier formed by the laws of heaven and earth was indestructible. The heaven speaker under the tree had an inviolable aura. Back off! With a light shout, the spiritual Qi around Inu surged. Above her slender hand, a spiritual Qi vortex rapidly spread out. The once timid little girl had been baptized in phoenix blood when she was young, and her talent was amazing. Later, she received the heavenly word inheritance and was personally taught by Ningchen, Man, Muqingxue, and the others. Now she was shining. Raging waves swept across heaven and earth. In front of the heavenly word peak, the four red dust realm experts were all sent flying. With a muffled groan and a splash of blood, the four retreated a few steps in shock. By the order of the heavens, purifying heavenly light. With the advantage, Inu didn't stop at all. She used her secret technique, and the dark clouds in the sky dispersed. Heavenly light shone down, illuminating the world. The heavenly light purified the world, and the demons retreated. Heavenly fire rose around the four scaled race experts and burned. How can this be? Under the purifying heavenly light, the scaled race's absolute defense revealed a flaw. The places that weren't protected by the scales were ignited, and the flames spread from inside to outside. Outside the battle, Di Mingtian, who hadn't made a move until now, looked at this scene with a serious expression. What a powerful heaven speaker. The four of them showed signs of defeat. Di Mingtian didn't want to waste any more time. He clenched his right hand, and a divine weapon with the aura of time appeared amidst the flowing light. It was filled with patterns, ancient, grand, and threatening. After dozens of years, the Sword Pavilion's divine artifact, the Sun and Moon Duel, reappeared in the world. A world-shaking sword, a divine tool that could slash heaven and earth. An incomparably sharp sword light cut through the void, slashing towards the woman on heavenly word peak. Sensing this, Inu took a step and turned, retreating 1,000 feet away. However, a shocking sound rang out. Sword Pavilion's divine artifact hacked apart heavenly speech peak. A huge crack extended from the peak all the way to the bottom. It was a horrifying scene that was hard to believe. The sun and moon were in the sky, and the Sword Pavilion's divine weapon shocked the world. With the divine artifact's might, the situation instantly changed. Inu frowned again. She took a step forward and flew out of heavenly speech peak. In the blink of an eye, the two figures crossed each other. Between heaven and earth, there were thousands of thunderbolts that swallowed the invader. Di Mingtian swung his sword and slashed apart the layers of lightning. He walked among them, not panicking at all. Tianfa, star fall. In the sea of thunder, raised her hand. Above the 9 heavens, a meteor fell from the sky and into the mortal world. Compared to your master, you are still far behind. Di Mingtian snorted coldly. He swung his divine artifact, and a sword broke through the 9 heavens. The divine artifact's power broke through the stars. In the horizon, the meteor collapsed with a loud bang. Huge rocks fell like rain, and thousands of miles around suffered a calamity. Under the rain of rocks, Di Mingtian's figure flashed. He was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of the woman. His heavy palm condensed energy, and the wind and clouds went crazy. With a strike of his palm, the layers of space in front of him instantly collapsed. In the instant of danger, the laws of heaven and earth gathered in front of Inu, forming a protective barrier that blocked in front of her. With a loud rumble, the heavy palm dispersed the laws of heaven and earth and landed on Iner's chest. With a muffled groan, blood spurted out. Demonic chi entered her body, and the vital chi in Iner's body trembled, unable to gather. In the void, Di Mingtian held his sword and walked forward step by step. His cold eyes looked at heavenly speech peak in front of him. He said, "Where is your master? Is he not here?" Back then on the ancient starry sky path, this woman's master had made everyone suffer quite a bit, including him. He had always remembered this kindness in his heart. "If you knew that my master was here, would you still dare to come?" Iner sneered and mocked him. Forcefully suppressing the injuries in her body, she gathered her energy with all her might, and the 9 heavens sword appeared. "Ha!" With a deep shout, his eyes suddenly opened. Instantly, the wind and clouds surged, and the sky changed color. Heaven's judgment. The heavenly speech forbidden technique manifested in the mortal world. Above the 9 heavens, a red sword floated up and down, and endless profound lightning surged. After a while, the sword fell, and thousands of lightning bolts opened a path. Facing the heaven's extremity, even Di Mingtian, who was half a step into the king realm, did not dare to be careless. He gathered all the demonic chi in his body, and in an instant, the dark force was activated rapidly. The sun and moon were in the sky, and sharp rays of light were dazzling and dazzling. In an instant, the might of the extremities collided. Iner used all that she had learned in her life, and the heavenly speech forbidden technique merged with the supreme intent on the sword to slay demons. On the other hand, Di Mingtian relied on his powerful cultivation and peerless divine artifact to defeat 10 people with his strength. He had hundreds of years of foundation, and this created the most extreme result. Ugh! The 2 moves collided, and the outcome was decided immediately. With an ear-piercing groan, endless shockwaves spread out. The entire heavenly speech peak was filled with sand, and the terrifying shockwaves destroyed more than half of the mountain in the blink of an eye. On the peak, Iner staggered and took a few steps back. She spat out a mouthful of blood, and it dyed the ground red. The clear difference in cultivation was indescribable. Even with the mandate of the heavens, it was difficult to make up for this huge gap. In the void, Di Mingtian's figure descended and stepped forward. He looked at the new heaven speaker who was heavily injured, and the coldness on his face was not concealed at all. Iner stabilized her body, and blood dripped from her eyes. The backlash from opening her eyes had worsened her injuries. "Let me correct you. No matter whether your master is here or not, I will take away what I want today." As soon as he finished speaking, Di Mingtian's figure flashed, and his palm landed on Iner's chest. The dark force surged into Iner's body. Blood spurted from her mouth, and her figure flew out again. Her long hair was scattered and dyed red, and an ancient golden hairpin flew out and fell silently. Di Mingtian grabbed the golden hairpin with his right hand, and a serious look flashed in his eyes. He had finally succeeded. Now that the mission was completed, Di Mingtian did not want to stay any longer. He glanced at the heavily injured girl under the apricot tree and said indifferently, "I will let you live for 10 days. Go and say goodbye to your master. Cherish these last moments. We will not meet again." As soon as he finished speaking, Di Mingtian turned into a stream of light and left quickly with the 4 powerful figures of the scaled tribe. On the collapsed heavenly speech peak, the dust waves did not stop for a long time. Under the apricot tree, coughed violently a few times, and blood kept flowing out of her mouth, dyeing her dress red. White apricot flowers kept falling from the swaying apricot tree, and they landed on the girl's body. The girl's red dress was embellished with sporadic white. She was so beautiful, so sad. Chapter 1101. Hongluan Star Zone, Jinxi City. Inside the bright room, a figure in a silver-gray cloak was concentrating on trimming the flowers and plants. She was as calm and indifferent as usual. At this moment, a beautiful figure in a white dress walked in from outside the restaurant. Her beautiful face did not have the slightest aura of the mortal world. She was like a fairy that descended to the mortal world, making people unable to blaspheme her. Inside the bright room, the owner of the Dawn Moon House sensed something and stopped what she was doing. She looked outside and said, "Hong Yuan, an important guest has arrived. Go and welcome her." On the first floor, Hong Yuan heard the message and walked out of the restaurant. A woman in white walked to the front of the restaurant. Seeing her, a strange look flashed through Hong Yuan's eyes. What a beautiful woman! "I'm Mu Qingxue, requesting to see the owner of the Dawn Moon House," Mu Qingxue said calmly. "The owner is already waiting for you. Miss, please follow me." Hong Yuan collected her thoughts and said softly before turning around to lead the way. The two of them went upstairs and arrived before the bright room. Hong Yuan stopped and said, "Owner, I've brought the important guest. Come in." The owner of the Dawn Moon House said from inside the room. Hearing this, Hong Yuan pushed open the door and looked at the woman behind her. "Miss Mu, please." "Thank you." Mu Qingxue stepped forward and walked into the room. It was a simple and elegant room with simple yet exquisite decorations. One could see that the owner's taste was extraordinary. "I'm Mu Qingxue, greetings to the owner." Mu Qingxue politely bowed and said calmly, "Miss Mu, I've long heard of your name." The owner of the Dawn Moon House revealed a smile. Mu Qingxue's eyes narrowed and soon returned to his senses. He somewhat understood. Her name should have been mentioned by Ning Chen. On the side, Hong Yuan silently walked out of the room and closed the door without lingering. "May I know why Miss Mu has come here?" The owner of the Dawn Moon House looked at the woman before her and asked. "To ask about someone's whereabouts," Mu Qingxue said calmly. "Is it the Jiming Marquis?" the owner of the Dawn Moon House asked. "Yes." Mu Qingxue nodded and said, "Owner has the bright scroll and can understand everything in the world. Can you tell me Ning Chen's whereabouts? Didn't he mention it to you before he left?" the owner of the Dawn Moon House asked. "I missed it," Mu Qingxue said honestly. A strange look flashed in the waning moon brothel master's eyes. The fate of these two people was truly filled with ups and downs. They had missed each other time and time again, but they were still unable to be together. Without a doubt, the person in the Jiming Marquis heart was Miss Mu. Unfortunately, too many things had happened to the two of them, making this relationship extremely difficult. Right now, he is not in the inner realm, nor is he in sky beyond heaven. The Dawn Moon Tower's mistress said calmly, "Although I can't clearly see where he went, according to my deduction, he should have gone to another realm." "What do you mean?" Mu Qingxue narrowed his eyes and said, "Ning Chen went to the place where the 100 clans came from." The Dawn Moon Pavilion's master nodded and said, "Only this reason can explain why the Ming Scroll was unable to find his whereabouts. He really did go there." Mu Qingxue let out a soft sigh. Before coming here, she had already guessed a bit. She understood Ning Chen's personality. The 100 races would be a great disaster sooner or later. For the safety of the inner realm, Ning Chen wouldn't leave them alone. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. The Dawn Moon Tower's mistress said faintly, "I think that the Jiming Marquis went to the place of the 100 races to find out their true strength. He shouldn't have gone." Mu Qingxue's face was filled with emotions and said, "Even if the sky collapses, he shouldn't have held it up. In life, there are things to do and things not to do. In the end, someone has to do it. Even if that person isn't the Jiming Marquis, it will be someone else. In this matter, there is no right or wrong, only willing or unwilling." The Dawn Moon Tower's mistress looked at the woman in front of her and continued, "Now that the Hell King's boundary is destroyed, the inner realm will not be spared if the 100 races wreak havoc. The people that the Jiming Marquis cherishes the most are there. Therefore, he can't leave them alone, right?" Mu Qingxue fell silent and didn't answer. "Miss Mu, are your memories still disappearing?" The Dawn Moon Tower's mistress sighed softly. Mu Qingxue nodded and said, "There is a price to pay for cultivating the great indifference. When I chose to enter the innate realm as soon as possible, I already expected this day to come." "Do you regret it?" the Dawn Moon Tower's mistress asked seriously. "Since I made the choice, I won't regret it." Mu Qingxue said calmly, "Right now, he and In help me remember what happened in the past. If I forget, they will tell me." "What? Heh, is that girl okay?" The Dawn Moon Tower's mistress chuckled. She is at the Heaven Speech Peak. She can clearly feel the power of the Heaven Speaker there. After I visit the tower's mistress, I will go there. Mu Qingxue said softly. Heaven Speaker. The Dawn Moon Tower's mistress looked into the distance and reminisced. That Heaven Speaker was so talented. Unfortunately, she died too early and didn't make it to this glorious era. Miss Mu. After a while, the Dawn Moon Tower's mistress came back to her senses. Just as she was about to speak, her expression suddenly changed, and she looked into the distance again with shock. How could this be? Mu Qingxue saw the drastic change in her expression and asked in confusion, Tower's mistress, what happened? Quickly return to the Heaven Speech Peak. The Dawn Moon Tower's mistress looked away and said in a deep voice, something happened to Yin. She didn't dare to imagine how crazy the Jiming Marquis would be if he knew that something happened to Yin. Just as she finished speaking, a white light flashed in the room. It was so fast that no one could react to it. When the figure appeared again, it was already tens of thousands of miles away. In the starry sky, Mu Qingshue's figure appeared and rushed towards the distant Heaven Speech planet without stopping. In the Dawn Moon Tower's mistress room, the Dawn Moon Tower's mistress collected her thoughts and walked outside. Hongwan, I will leave for a few days. You stay here. Yes. At the same time, in the primordial demon realm, Ning Chen was sitting in front of a bonfire and quietly gnawing on dry food. Suddenly, his chest tightened and an indescribable suffocating feeling came. It was so painful that he couldn't breathe. Rumble. Outside the dilapidated temple, the clear sky was suddenly covered with dark clouds and thunder rumbled. Not long after, heavy rain poured down, fogging up the world. Ning Chen stood up and looked into the distance. Shock flashed through his eyes. Why did he have that bad premonition? Did something happen to someone? On the Heaven Speech Peak, a cold wind blew. After a great battle, desolation filled the peak. Under the apricot tree, a pretty girl was lying in a pool of blood. Her clothes were dyed red with blood and she was dazzling. Petals of apricot flowers fell from the girl's body. They were as white as snow and were gradually dyed red. Just as the apricot flowers were about to fall, a beautiful figure in white walked out from the Heaven Speech Peak. Her speed was so fast that it was beyond imagination. It was as if she had crossed time and space and appeared out of thin air. Mu Qingxue stepped forward and saw the girl covered in blood under the apricot tree. His pupils shrank. Chapter 1102. On the Heavenly Word Peak, under the apricot tree, a young girl was unconscious and covered in blood. The void rippled and a white streak of light appeared. Arriving under the apricot tree in a single step, Mu Qingshue's body shook when he saw the young girl's blood-stained clothes. Mu Qingxue stepped forward to help the unconscious girl up. He condensed his true essence and poured it into her body. In an instant, demonic qi surged out from Yin's heart, sealing her vital meridians and cutting off her vitality. Mu Qingshue's face turned grave as he struggled to move his origin energy. Panic flashed through his usually calm eyes. He could feel that Yin's vitality was fading and she could only hold on for 10 days at most. Behind him, a streak of light arrived and a figure in a silver-gray cloak walked out. Looking at the scene in front of him, his expression turned solemn. The worst-case scenario still happened. That Jiming Marquis had spent his entire life protecting these precious people, but he couldn't keep them. In the end, he couldn't keep them. This girl couldn't hold on for more than a few days. Sensing the person behind him, Mu Qingxue got up and turned around to look at the former. Housemaster, can you see who did this? Scaled race, Di Mingtian. The Dawn Moon House Master said calmly. The remnant demonic qi here was clearly detectable. It was easy to find the culprit. Mu Qingxue nodded and did not say anything. He picked up the girl under the apricot tree and was about to leave. Where are you going? The Dawn Moon House Master asked. To find Ning Chen and take revenge. Mu Qingxue said coldly. The Dawn Moon House Master's expression turned solemn. The Jiming Marquis left a phoenix body in the Reverence Moon Holy Ground. You can go there to find him. Many thanks. Mu Qingxue replied calmly. His figure flickered as he left the Heavenly Word Peak. The Dawn Moon House master looked at the withered apricot tree and sighed inwardly. Di Mingtian left in, or alive, his thoughts were deep. If he wanted to save her, he would have to pay with his life. He couldn't say these words. This world needed the Jiming Marquis more. Although Tianyu was strong, he needed time to grow. The current human race couldn't wait any longer. At the border between the All-Heaven Star Field and the Lojia Star Field, the Reverence Moon Ancient Ground, the sacred ground of the Reverence Moon Clan. Tens of thousands of Reverence Moon Clan members were kneeling before an altar. On the altar, a red-clothed figure stood before a stone statue, praying for the entire Reverence Moon Clan. With the moonlight, the clear saint force became stronger and stronger. The phoenix was noble and pure, untainted by the mortal world. Right at this time, in front of the Reverence Moon Ancient Ground, a white-clad figure appeared in the starry space. Her peerlessly beautiful face now had a hint of a mundane aura. Mu Qingxue did not hesitate. He waved his hand and the Cheng-Ying sword appeared. With a swing of his sword, a formless wheel of swords appeared behind him. In an instant, the wheel of swords turned into boundless swords that pierced through the air. In the next moment, there was a violent tremor as the sword light collided with the divine restriction. Layers of sword chi dispersed and were blocked by the divine restriction. Inside the Reverence Moon Ancient Ground, the Reverence Moon clansmen sensed something, and their faces were filled with shock. "Don't panic. It's not an enemy." On the altar, Ning Chen spoke softly. His gaze was fixed on the sky, and in a flicker, he flew out. The phoenix spread its wings and soared into the 9 heavens. In the blink of an eye, the phoenix reappeared at the Reverence Moon Ancient Ground. The red-clad figure walked out and looked at the newcomer. Just as he was about to say something, his expression changed. "I'm sorry, I didn't take good care of her." Mu Qingxue spoke, and his eyes dimmed with guilt. "It's not your fault." The phoenix body stepped forward and took the unconscious Yin-Er into his arms. Sensing the rapidly dissipating vitality in the young girl's body, the phoenix body turned and walked towards the Reverence Moon Ancient Ground. On the altar, the phoenix body placed the young girl in front of the moon god's stone statue and knelt down silently. At this moment, high in the 9 heavens, clouds began to gather. The moon god's stone statue shone brightly, and an aura that transcended the mortal world emerged. The moon god had descended and reappeared in the mortal world. The beautiful figure in the void was pure and holy. Moonlight swirled around her body, obscuring her true appearance. When the moon god appeared, the Reverence Moon clansmen prostrated themselves in front of the altar and saluted respectfully. "Moon god." The phoenix body lowered its head and said, "Young man, in this world, no one is qualified to receive your worship. The same goes for the gods." The moon god spoke softly. "Moon god, please save Ina's life." The phoenix body's eyes sank as it pleaded. "I can't save her." In the void, the moon god sighed softly and said, "Even if the gods come to the mortal world, they can't change the rules of heaven and earth." Hearing this, the phoenix body trembled once again. The suppressed sorrow rushed to its heart, and it said softly, "I'm willing to use 1,000 years of my life in exchange for 100 years of her health." Above the altar, the moon god fell silent. After a while, she said, "The demonic chi in her body has locked all her meridians. The person who performed the technique did it on purpose. If you want to save her, you will exhaust all your strength. Moreover, during this process, it's impossible for her body to remain unaffected. Even if she survives, there will be irresolvable side effects in the future. I want her alive." The phoenix body raised its head and looked at the god in the void, and said without any hesitation. The moon god sighed again and did not try to persuade the phoenix body anymore. She nodded and said, "As you wish." With that said, the moon god raised her hand. Specks of light fell from the sky and entered the young girl's body. "I will do my best to protect her heart. As for the demonic chi in her body, only you can remove it." "Many thanks." The phoenix body responded. Its phoenix essence burned rapidly, and its supreme saint force turned into a sky-scorching power that swallowed the entire altar. On the Reverence Moon Holy Ground's altar, divine flames rose, and a phoenix rose from the ashes. The phoenix body's saint force dispersed, expelling the demonic chi from the young girl's body. In the void, as the moon god's energy was depleted, the moon god's body became more illusory. A few breaths later, it disappeared completely. In front of the altar, millions of Reverence Moon Holy Grounds clansmen watched the scene in front of them with uncontrollable sorrow. High Priestess. In front of millions of Reverence Moon Holy Grounds clansmen, a white-haired old woman said with a sorrowful expression, "Don't grieve for me. The phoenix is immortal and indestructible. There will be a day when I return and lead all of you forward." As her words fell, the divine flames above the altar dissipated, and Hong Yi's figure disappeared. No one could sense her aura anymore. In front of the moon god statue, the demonic chi in the young girl's body was completely erased, and her vitality finally stopped dissipating. Not far away, Mu Qingxue, who had witnessed this scene with his own eyes, turned and left without saying a word. This enmity would not rest until one of them was dead. In front of the Z-Wei galaxy, Di Mingtian's figure appeared. After completing his mission, he walked towards the scaled race's territory in the distance. In the distance, a streak of white light sped past, faster and faster. Behind it, the starlight flickered, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. The desolate city's daughter came with murderous intent. The desolate city's daughter who had hidden her sharpness for the past 100 years had once again revealed her peerless sharpness. She had once suppressed all the geniuses in the inner world and was the first to step into the Xiantian realm. In the Z-Wei galaxy, Di Mingtian was less than 100,000 li away from the scaled race's territory. At this moment, an extremely fast streak of white light shot through the air, traversing time and space, forcefully blocking the path of the royal bloodline of the scaled clan. Di Mingtian sensed it and stopped in his tracks. He looked at the person in front of him and asked solemnly, "Who are you?" "Mu Qingxue." As he spoke, a beautiful woman in white appeared. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent, and she said coldly, "On the heavenly word peak, the girl you injured called me mistress." Chapter 1103. In the Z-Wei galaxy, the lady of the desolate city crossed 2 galaxies and came to kill the royal bloodline of the scaled tribe. The lady of the desolate city, who wanted to return to the mortal world for 100 years, used the Taishang unruffled emotion and forbidden energy. "Today, you will die." The declaration of death was bone-chilling. Mu Qingxue clenched his fist and a divine weapon as thin as a cicada's wing appeared. It was the famous sword of the desolate city, the Qingying sword. Feeling the anger in its master's heart, the Qingying sword kept humming. The visible sword gradually turned invisible, making it difficult to see clearly. Taking a step forward, Mu Qingxue's body was like a bolt of white lightning in the starry sky. Holding his sword, he started his killing spree. The endless flames of war burned the world. Facing the sudden killing intent, Di Mingtian did not dare to be careless. He raised his hands and the demonic chi around him rose. The dark energy turned into a protective barrier in front of him. The Qingying sword passed by and the Taishang forbidden energy was activated. The invisible sword light hit the demonic chi barrier. A violent collision sounded. The sword light shook the demonic chi. At the moment of stalemate, Mu Qingxue pointed at the sword and the Qingying sword spun rapidly. With a clang, the Qingying sword broke the barrier and stabbed at Di Mingtian's heart. However, a strange light rose. The scaled tribe's armor protected the vital parts and the divine weapon could not penetrate. "It's hard to take revenge." With a sneer, Di Mingtian gathered his primordial energy into his palm and counterattacked. Mu Qingxue's body was pushed back a dozen steps. His cold eyes stared at the strange light on Mu Qingxue's chest. "I killed one of his disciples and now a woman comes. The 9th son of the Mahist sect, how dare he not come?" Di Mingtian waved his right hand and an ancient divine weapon appeared in the dark energy. The sun and moon shone brightly in the sky. It was the divine weapon of the sword pavilion, the sun and moon saber. It was the divine weapon of the divine weapons. "You are not qualified to make him fight." Mu Qingxue wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and rushed forward again. In an instant, the tip of the sword pierced through the air. The extremely fast sword broke through the demonic chi and landed on Di Mingtian's chest once again. A strange light rose and the result was the same. The scaled tribe's armor blocked the sword light. It was an absolute defense. A futile struggle. Di Mingtian snorted coldly. The divine weapon in his hand slashed down. As the sun and moon flickered, the starry sky was split apart. The peerless sharpness shook the heavens and the earth. Since he was already prepared, Mu Qingxue didn't make the same mistake as before. With a stomp of his foot, his silhouette instantly disappeared, and he reappeared in the world with extreme speed. Fast, so fast that it was hard for his divine senses to distinguish. When he regained his senses, the sky was filled with white-robed figures. Streaks and streaks of sword gleams slashed towards Di Mingtian's chest. Your speed isn't bad. Unfortunately, that's all you can do. Di Mingtian raised his hand to wipe off the blood on the corner of his mouth as he looked at the incoming sword light. He yelled deeply, and the chaotic dark power started to rise as his half-step king warrior cultivation exploded. Di Mingtian's demonic essence spread out from his body and engulfed the sword radiance with his dark force. Everything within a 10,000-mile radius turned into darkness. In the starry sky, Mu Qingxue's silhouette seemed to have sunk into a swamp. His advantage in speed was greatly restricted. The sky full of afterimages disappeared, and the real body appeared. Di Mingtian seized the opportunity and leaped forward, slashing down mercilessly with his sword. The two swords clashed and sparks burst out. The white-robed figure flew out and smashed towards the distant planet. Dust and sand filled the skies. On this primitive great star that was dried up of life, a beautiful white-clothed figure fell down, smashing open a 1,000-foot-deep crater. Di Mingtian's silhouette slowly descended from the sky. Looking at the crater covered by dust, he didn't dare to be careless. However, right at this moment, a dazzling white sword gleam appeared in the sky. The next moment, the white-robed figure soared into the sky. Behind her, huge sword wings flapped, splitting apart the darkness as she increased her speed. Before anyone could react, the white-robed figure flashed past. Her speed was so fast that even the heavens and earth couldn't withstand it. Wherever the white-robed figure passed, the space shattered. With a boom, the sword edge shook the divine armor. Di Mingtian let out a muffled groan as his silhouette flew out. After gaining the upper hand in one move, Mu Qingxue's silhouette flashed out again. The Cheng Ying sword spun rapidly, and the Supreme Forbidden Origin was activated. Ha! The Forbidden Origin surged, and Mu Qingxue's cultivation rose rapidly. In the mortal world, they forgot about each other. 7 ultimate arts, beginning of reincarnation. With the Forbidden Origin, Mu Qingxue's left palm activated the power of reincarnation. With a thunderous roar, he slammed his palm on the former's chest. Another heavy blow landed on the same spot. With a boom, Di Mingtian's mouth was filled with blood, and the remaining force penetrated his body, severely injuring the demon. The silver-robed figure crashed onto the planet, and the ground collapsed. Huge cracks spread across the planet. The sky was filled with dust again. Mu Qingxue didn't hesitate and charged into it. After a while, the ground shook. Heaven and earth moved at extreme speed, and the absolute defense. The two geniuses of the age faced each other, and they wouldn't stop until one of them was dead. The primitive great star seemed to have met with an apocalypse, gradually falling apart in the fierce battle between the two. The entire great star began to crumble, and huge rocks were sent flying into the distance. In front of Di Mingtian's chest, the scaled race's armor blocked most of the attacks. Even though he was hit repeatedly, he was still able to maintain his peak strength. On the other hand, the Lady of Desolate City was trapped in the dark force field, and her forbidden origin was rapidly depleting. She couldn't maintain her peak state for long. I told you, this is all you can do. Di Mingtian snorted coldly. He suppressed his injuries with his demonic chi and attacked with his divine weapon. As the two swords clashed, the divine weapon's power became more and more shocking. The Cheng Ying sword couldn't block it, and tiny cracks appeared on the thin sword. Not good. Seeing this, Mu Qingxue's expression turned serious. He used the forbidden origin to protect his sword, and pointed with his left hand. 7 Ultimate Arts, 9 Void Wave Breaking Finger. As he pointed out with his finger, endless forbidden energy gathered. In an instant, the power of his finger shook the divine armor. Boom! Again and again, the scales on Di Mingtian's chest began to crack as well. Even the absolute defense could not withstand the continuous attacks. Di Mingtian's expression changed slightly as his armor was damaged. He endured the pain in his chest and gathered his demonic qi to counterattack. The dark force field surged out. Mu Qingxue retreated quickly, avoiding the palm energy. He stepped in the air 100 feet away and turned back again. The Cheng-Ying sword flew out, shining brightly. A white light pierced through the sky and pierced toward the cracks on Di Mingtian's armor. Naive. Di Mingtian was furious after being injured again and again. He used his absolute defense to forcefully grab the sword edge. In the next moment, the sound of the sword edge rubbing against the armor sounded. It was so ear-piercing that it made people shudder. Back off! With a roar, Di Mingtian's demonic qi burst out. He clenched his left hand that was holding the Cheng-Ying sword. The cracked divine weapon finally couldn't withstand it anymore and shattered into pieces. Ah! The dark force field hit Mu Qingxue again and sent him flying a few hundred feet away. In the endless battle until now, both of them were seriously injured. Blood covered their bodies, but it couldn't hide their killing intent. The Cheng-Ying sword shattered, and the battle turned around. Di Mingtian's figure flashed past, using his absolute defense and the power of the divine weapon to attack again. Cold blade closed in, and every move was fatal. Mu Qingxue turned around and moved into the sword light. You still have some strength after losing your sword. Di Mingtian mocked coldly. His dark force and cold blade blocked the girl's path of retreat, showing no mercy. Unruffled emotions witnessed by the heavens. Witnessed by the heavens, unruffled emotions. Mu Qingxue's forbidden origin was activated, and his memory was lost at an accelerated rate. His body was many times stronger than before, and it pierced through the sky and shook the sun and moon. The white-robed figure flashed past quickly, and not a trace of him could be seen. Amidst an earth-shattering sword hum, a red wooden box appeared in the void. The great green sparrow sword broke through the void, and it reappeared after 100 years. Holding the great green sparrow sword, Mu Qingxue's figure flashed in front of Di Mingtian. Forbidden origin circled around the ordinary sword, and the sword pierced through the body. Ah! As the sword entered the body, the forbidden origin exploded, instantly destroying the cultivator's meridians. Di Mingtian groaned, and he retreated again and again. Blood spurted from his chest, dyeing his divine robes red. His meridians were destroyed, and his life was in danger. However, Di Mingtian's eyes were filled with a strong desire to live, and he countered with a palm strike on the former's chest. Retreat! Not daring to fight anymore, Di Mingtian took the opportunity to retreat, and quickly flew toward the scaled race's territory. As long as he returned to the scaled race, he would be safe. With the dragon transformation pool, his injuries would recover quickly. The loss of life was so clear that Di Mingtian's consciousness gradually became hazy. For the first time, he felt fear in his heart. Behind him, the heavily injured Mu Qingxue stabilized himself and spat out a mouthful of blood. He did not have time to suppress his injuries and quickly chased after Di Mingtian. 10,000 miles away, the white flowing light broke through the sky and blocked the front again. A distance of 90,000 miles was nothing to a half-step king. However, at this moment, it was like the end of the world, unreachable. Father, save me! With death blocking his way, Di Mingtian's eyes were filled with despair. He looked into the distant sky and used the last of his strength to shout. The desperate roar shook the starry sky. In the distant scaled race's territory, the scaled king seemed to have sensed something, and his eyes suddenly opened. In an instant, the king rushed out of the abyss and flew into the distance. Father! In the starry sky, Di Mingtian saw the demonic clouds in the distance, and his face was filled with joy. Hope reignited in his eyes. No one can change your defeat today. With his back facing the demonic clouds, he could still feel the powerful demonic power. However, even a king could not instantly reach the distance of 90,000 miles. With one step, Mu Qingxue arrived in front of Di Mingtian. He burned his restriction yuan to the limit and sent out a palm strike with full force toward the former's chest. The sound of the strike echoed through the starry sky. Endless restriction yuan entered the body, instantly destroying the martial artist's bones. Blood spurted out, and the demonic cultivator's eyes turned misty. The silver-clothed figure flew out and crashed into the distant withered star. The flame of life in Di Mingtian's body gradually disappeared. In front of his chest, a pool of blood spread out, dyeing the silent withered star red. He had been good at scheming all his life, brave all his life, but in the end, it was all for naught. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. His powerless eyes gradually closed. The last thing he saw was the white-clothed woman standing in the starry sky. She was so beautiful, but the death god took his life without mercy. Chapter 1104. In a dilapidated temple in the primordial demon realm, a bonfire danced. A plain-clothed figure stood in front, looking at the heavy rain outside the temple. The aura of the phoenix body had disappeared. Separated by a realm, he could not know what had happened in the sky beyond heaven. However, there was no doubt that something had happened there. The three bodies were of one mind, and they were bound together for good or ill. He was still alive, which meant that the phoenix body had not fallen but had undergone nirvana. That ominous premonition from before might be the reason for the phoenix body's nirvana. Not far away, the little girl held some dry food in her dirty hands and gnawed on it. In order to survive, she did not dare to waste any dry food even though it was hard to swallow. Bang! At this moment, the door of the dilapidated temple was kicked open. Two burly men came in and shouted when they saw the little girl in the dilapidated temple. "They are here." Behind them, three companions walked in. Their clothes were soaked by the rain and stuck to their bodies, making them look a little embarrassed. "Kill them," one of the burly men said coldly. "Yes." The three men walked into the temple, ready to eliminate the source of the problem. Seeing this, the little girl was terrified. She immediately ran behind the plain-clothed young man beside the bonfire and hid. The two burly men also walked into the dilapidated temple. When they saw the young man in front of the little girl, they frowned unconsciously. Although this person had not made a move, their instincts told them that this person was not to be trifled with. "Brother, please do us a favor," one of the burly men said seriously. Ningchen recovered from his thoughts and looked at the five people who walked into the temple. There was no change in his calm eyes. The noise in the temple woke up the unconscious woman not far away. Her ferocious face and a pair of cold eyes opened. When she saw the five people, she immediately sat up. "Second mother." Seeing the woman wake up, the little girl immediately ran forward and said in surprise, "Cuckoo." The woman pulled the little girl behind her and looked at the five people in front of her vigilantly. At this moment, she was like a mother beast protecting her young, unusually fierce. With a life and death crisis in front of her, there was no way out. The woman's gaze once again fell on the white-haired young man. With a pleading expression, she said, "Sir, Ku is still young. Please save her life." Ningchen quietly watched the scene before him and sighed in his heart. His eyes were strangely calm. The strong preyed on the weak. In his life, he had seen far too much. He had once tried his best to save them, but he had been powerless to stop them. Perhaps if he saved the mother and daughter today, in the future, the mother and daughter would turn into the coldest demons to these men, who would crazily seek revenge. However, if he did not save them today, the woman and the little girl would undoubtedly become ghosts under his blade. There was no way for them to survive. To save or not to save, it was a simple decision, but it was difficult to make. "Sir, please do me a favor." The burly man who spoke earlier opened his mouth again and said politely. Ningchen shifted his gaze and looked at the five people in front of him. He said calmly, "You can't even spare the child's life? If you don't remove the roots when you cut the weeds, they'll grow again when the spring breeze blows. Mister, our two races have been enemies for generations. If you leave even one alive, it could be a disaster for our race in the future. Speaking up to here, the burly man paused and looked at the woman not far away. He said with a cold expression, "Mister, you only saw their pitiful side today. You didn't see the cruelty of their race when they wantonly slaughtered our race. At that time, they didn't show any mercy to our race." Hearing the burly man's words, the woman clenched her fists. She did not deny it. Her ferocious face became more alert as she prepared to rush out of the encirclement at any time. Ning Chen clenched his right hand. It was so quiet that there was no movement of qi. However, the space around the woman suddenly twisted. In the next moment, blood poured out like a waterfall, filling the sky. Her destroyed qi sea swept out like raging waves. Her cultivations scattered between heaven and earth. Her martial bones were destroyed and there was no way for her to recover. The woman let out a mournful groan. She knelt down with a thud and cold sweat flowed down her back. Inside the dilapidated hall, everyone was shocked when they saw this shocking scene. What just happened? Why didn't they feel the slightest movement of qi? Her cultivation has been lost and her martial bones are destroyed. She can no longer be a threat to you. Can you spare them? Ning Chen looked at the 5 people and said calmly. The 2 burly men recovered from their shock. They looked at the white-haired young man in front of them with fear and bowed respectfully. "Venerable, we have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. If we offended you before, please forgive us. You are just protecting your own people. There is nothing wrong with that." Ning Chen said indifferently. He looked at the woman and the little girl and said, "That child has practically no cultivation at all. If you're afraid of her even when she's like this, then the reputation of an expert is undeserved." The 2 burly men looked at each other and bowed again. They said respectfully, "Thank you, Venerable. We will take our leave." After they finished speaking, the 2 turned around and left with their 3 companions. In the ruined palace, blood dripped from the woman's body and dyed the ground red. The pain of having her cultivation destroyed was unbearable. After the 5 people left, the woman collapsed on the ground powerlessly. Her tensed will relaxed and she immediately fainted again. "Second mother!" The little girl's expression changed and she exclaimed. Ning Chen walked up and pointed at the woman's dantian to stop the bleeding. He looked at the little girl and said calmly, "Her injuries are not light. If she can't find a doctor to treat her, she won't last more than a few days." Hearing this, Ku was anxious. She looked at the pouring rain outside and didn't know what to do. "This rain will stop in a few days. However, your second mother won't last until then." Ning Chen said honestly. Ku gritted her teeth and ran out without hesitation. In the heavy rain, the little figure disappeared. It was so weak that it seemed like it would be swallowed by the mortal world at any time. Why didn't the immortals save them? At this time, the space on Ning Chen's shoulder twisted and the little gourd appeared. She can find a doctor and this woman will be saved. It is such a simple thing. Why do you need someone else's help? Ning Chen said calmly. It is not simple at all. The little gourd murmured softly. That little girl was only about the size of a 6 or 7-year-old human child. How could a child of such a size find a doctor when she was penniless? This is her fate. Ning Chen said calmly, if you can't do it, then you have to bear the consequences. If I save them today, who will save them in the future? The little gourd didn't dare to say anything more. It hid in the God-forbidden seed and disappeared. Ning Chen looked at the unconscious woman not far away and ignored it. He sat down in front of the bonfire again and waited quietly. There was still no movement from the sealed cultivation. The immortal gate suppression was unbreakable. Tap tap. Right at this moment, numerous black-clothed figures flashed past outside the ruined temple. They were high up in the air, and their footsteps caused beautiful splashes to appear as they stepped on the rainwater. Again! Inside the ruined temple, Ning Chen felt something. He looked outside the temple and coldness flashed in his eyes. He couldn't remember how many waves of pursuers it was. It seemed like even if he left the primordial demon region, there were still people who wouldn't give up. Ning Chen walked out of the hall and pointed his right hand. The rain gathered and streaks of water swords flew out of the ruined temple. Ugh! Several groans were heard. The water swords pierced through their bodies and brought out a waterfall of blood. Even if they had lost their cultivation, a swordsman who had just entered the extreme realm was not to be bullied. Great Sword Realm. With a soft voice, the watery light spread. The extreme realm of Sword Realm was opened. In the Sword Realm, a white-haired figure in plain clothes stood in the air. He looked at the black figures in front of him calmly and said, "You've been chasing for so long. Take a rest." As soon as he said that, the watery light swallowed everyone in the Sword Realm. Silently, hundreds of demon assassins disappeared. The battle ended in the blink of an eye. The world returned to normal. The heavy rain washed away the spilled blood and covered the evil of the massacre. Ningchen turned and walked into the hall in the ruined temple. He continued to wait patiently. "If you encounter any pursuers again, I can help you." Demon Chi surged. The demon walked out and said in a deep voice. Ningchen shook his head and said, "No. I sealed your aura with the divine seal to hide from the celestial sect. If you help, your identity will be exposed. Then you will be suppressed. Saints and demons counter each other. The celestial sect's threat to you is far greater than mine." The demon's eyes darkened. The people from the primordial demon region will become stronger and stronger. Now that you have lost your cultivation, how are you going to deal with people like Xianzhan? "Don't worry," Ningchen said calmly. Ningchen said calmly, "Even the celestial devil clan can't casually dispatch experts at the peak of the king realm. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy to deal with these few pursuits. Now, the news of my complete loss of cultivation should have spread throughout the 3 imperial cities. This is a good thing for us. At least, we have a lot of time to prepare before the true experts arrive." The demon's eyes narrowed. He looked at the woman not far away and said indifferently, "There's no need to care about this." "It's nothing," Ningchen said calmly. Ningchen calmly said, "Who knows if today's cause will bear tomorrow's fruit? When did you start to believe in cause and effect?" The demon sneered. "I don't know." Ningchen shook his head and said, "I forgot. Maybe I'm just looking for a reason for my actions. Let's put this matter aside for now. The Phoenix Bodies incident means that the sky beyond heaven is no longer peaceful. We need to speed up here." "You're not looking for the 2-Fox Princess anymore?" The demon was puzzled. Ningchen said calmly, "However, we have other things to do while we leave." "What things?" The demon's eyes narrowed. "Do you remember what Fan Lingyue did back then?" Ningchen looked into the distance and said. Hearing this, the demon's expression changed slightly. "What do you want to do?" "Actually, the current situation in the primordial demon region is very similar to the divine prefecture back then. The heavenly demon clan is dominant and seems to be invincible, but in fact they are surrounded by enemies." At this point, a strange light flashed in Ningchen's eyes. He continued, "This time, Fan Lingyue has already shown us what to do, hasn't he?" It was a little pungent and mixed with a spicy smell. It was very unpleasant. After waiting for another quarter of an hour, Ningchen took down the medicinal herbs that had been boiled and placed them in front of the little girl. He said, "When it's slightly cooler, feed it to your second mother. After drinking it, your second mother should wake up very quickly." After he finished speaking, Ningchen stood up and walked out of the hall without staying any longer. When Ku saw him, she asked anxiously, "Sir, are you leaving?" Ningchen's footsteps paused. He looked back at the little girl and said calmly, "I still have things to do. When your second mother wakes up, you can leave. If fate wills it, we'll meet again in the future." After he finished speaking, Ningchen continued to walk out of the hall. He didn't stop. The pouring rain gradually engulfed Su Yi's figure. Not long after, he completely disappeared. Ku looked at the figure that disappeared in the rain. Her bright eyes flashed with tears. She firmly remembered the former's back view in her heart. "Immortal Elder, you have to compensate me." In the heavy rain, the little gourd appeared and said with dissatisfaction, "Saving a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda. As a spiritual being of heaven and earth, how can you not have this awareness?" Ningchen stretched out his hand and lightly flicked the little gourd's head. "It hurts." The little gourd hugged its little head and pouted. That person's life was clearly not in danger. Immortal Elder still wants to use my blood. It's too wasteful. Ningchen chuckled and said, because I'm in a hurry. I can't just leave halfway after saving someone. The little gourd continued to pout and said with dissatisfaction, I don't care. Immortal Elder, you have to compensate me. Ningchen smiled faintly and said, if I have the chance, I'll find you some heavenly treasures as compensation. Immortal Elder, you have to keep your word. Hearing this, the little gourd smiled happily and nodded vigorously. Then, it hid itself in the divine restriction again. Ningchen shook his head helplessly. This little gourd was about to become a spiritual being. He just didn't know if this divine vine could grow into a divine being like the undying divine tree in the future. Just as knowing destiny was heading west, in the northern sorcerer tribe, a few emperors had been talking for several months on the huge altar. In the illusory space, the 5 emperors stood quietly and discussed how to deal with the future together. Go Huang, Scale Emperor, Stone Emperor, Holy Master of God's capital mountain, and the leader of Golden Lion tribe, the 5 supreme beings of heaven and earth all had solemn expressions on their faces. Over the past few months, news of what had happened in the primordial demon territory had been spreading, shocking the 5 of them. The Fox tribe was also destroyed. The silver-robed figure flew out quickly, his aura stronger than before. With a flip of his palm, a stormy wave cut through the starry sky. Mu Qingshue's expression turned serious as he stepped out to avoid the palm energy. It was a dangerous situation with the king's soul in front and the Scale King's body behind. The situation could not be delayed. 7 ultimate arts, return to the desolate era. With the crisis unresolved, Mu Qingxue did not waste any more time. With a deep roar, he used the last of his strength. Instantly, a strange light shot into the sky as an unprecedented power gathered. The terrifying power broke through the restrictions of heaven and earth and quickly disintegrated the starry sky. In front of him, the Dark Emperor Heavenly Corpse's power also rose rapidly. The Scale King's soul was trying to stop the former at all costs. In the next moment, the Indifference Grand Supreme and the Scale Race's power clashed. A shocking shockwave swept out, and wherever the shockwave passed, the stars turned into stardust and disappeared. Arg! Blood splattered and dyed his white robe red. Mu Qingxue took half a step back and staggered to stabilize himself. In front of him, the Dark Emperor Heavenly Corpse's blood kept splattering. His divine robe was torn and almost completely destroyed. Behind him, the demonic cloud spread out, and a powerful palm energy broke through the sky and attacked the injured lady of Desolate City. Mu Qingxue turned around, and blood mist surrounded his hands as he used the Grand Supreme Forbidden Art. With a thump, his white robe flew out and was dyed red again under the king's heavy palm. In the starry sky, the Scale King stood in the rolling demonic cloud. He felt that his son's life force had completely disappeared, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. You shall be buried with my son. With a furious roar, the Scale King's demonic aura shot into the sky, and his terrifying king's aura covered the starry sky. Mu Qingxue looked at the changes around him, and there was not much fear on his face. 7 Ultimate Arts, 100 Generations Final Chapter. The last chapter of the Grand Supreme Forbidden Chapter was a forbidden technique that was activated for the first time. Mu Qingxue's eyes shone with a strange light. Before the forbidden chapter of the forbidden chapter was activated, violent waves gathered and formed a brilliant scene of reincarnation. Just as the forbidden chapter was about to be activated, a blue sword light broke through the sky from afar. The purest sword aura instantly pierced through the darkness. Almost at the same time, in a faraway world, the earth fire spewed out. After the phoenix body's aura completely disappeared, the sky was filled with divine flames. The power of laws suppressing the vermilion bird dissipated, and the divine flames soared into the sky. From the earth fire, a red-robed figure walked out. Chapter 1106. In the Z-Way galaxy, the king-level warriors were pressing for his life. Mu Qingxue, who had just experienced a fierce battle, was already out of strength and had no strength to fight back. As the crisis approached, there was no time to hesitate. Mu Qingxue forcefully activated the Taishang restriction martial art, Chaos Restriction Yuan, shaking the starry sky. The king raised his hand, and a completely different kind of destructive power exploded, crushing forward. The battle was in danger. At this critical moment, a blue sword light broke through the sky from afar. It was an outstanding sword aura, exquisite and pure, without any impurities. The sword light arrived, suppressing the enemy first. Before the scaled king could release his palm, it was interrupted. With a rumble, the sword light shook the scaled king's unending protection. In the intense vibration, the scaled king took half a step back to dissipate the remaining power. In front of him, the clouds dispersed, and a familiar figure appeared. Her figure was exquisite, and her face was beautiful. Her eyes were clear like water, reflecting all the evils in the world. This was the first time they had met in 100 years. Mu Qingxue looked at the figure in front of him and immediately guessed the identity of the person. It was the barbarian race's princess. Ah man, be careful. Their scales are hard to deal with. It won't help if you fight for a long time. Mu Qingxue said with a serious expression. Okay. Hearing the reminder, Ah man nodded lightly. She looked at the shining scales in front of her, and a strange light flashed in her clear eyes. Another one to die with my son. I'll fulfill your wish. The scaled king could not hide his anger. He raised his hand, and a dark power surged, sweeping through the starry sky. When the king attacked, Ah man's figure moved as well. She avoided layers of dark power with each step. The sword of initial heart bloomed as if it had a mind of its own. It found the weakest point of the monster energy and cut through the obstacles, reaching the king. With a clang, the sword tip and the scale armor clashed. The sword of initial heart pierced through the gap between the two scales. The sword technique was so precise that there was no mistake at all. Wherever the will was, the sword would be there. An ear-piercing sound of friction was heard. The sword of initial heart pierced through 3 inches, and the sword momentum gradually stopped. The scaled king's expression sank, and he turned his palm to attack Ah man's chest. When the palm energy arrived, Ah man's body moved and dodged the palm energy. She took a step forward and her body turned back once more. She pointed her finger and the sword of initial heart penetrated another 3 inches. The scale armor blocked the sword tip, but it could not block the remaining power of the sword. The sword chi vibrated, and the scaled king took another step back. The weight of time was pressing down on him, and he gradually grew old. Mother, look, there is a white-haired person. In front of the village, a child pointed into the distance and said in surprise. The child's mother looked in the direction of the child's finger, but she did not see anything. She could not help but scold, "How can there be a white-haired person? Children should not lie." "I saw it just now." The child pouted and said softly. 100 miles away, the white-clothed figure appeared. She took a step and disappeared again. The mortal realm's scenery was left behind. He had seen it and remembered it in his heart. In the west, it was getting colder. After months of running, there was still no news of the 2 fox princesses. It was as if they had disappeared into thin air. Although Ningchen was prepared, he could not help but feel disappointed. The extermination of the fox clan was caused by the celestial demons. Wan and Xiao Xiao must hate the celestial demons, and even him. Even if they knew that he was looking for them, they probably would not show up easily. He did not know if he could find them, but as long as he was in the primordial demon realm, he would not give up. In the western sacred region, a pure land ruled by the Golden Lion clan. The fighting and killing gradually decreased. Ningchen walked towards the center of the sacred region. The scenery in the sacred region was beautiful, and the exotic atmosphere was very strong. The golden-haired men were as strong as bulls, and the blue-eyed women were as enchanting as snakes. Ningchen walked among them. His white hair was very eye-catching. The blue-eyed women saw the handsome knowing destiny, and ripples appeared in their eyes. The women whispered to each other, and their eyes never left him. The women's eyes were attracted, and many men were jealous. A strong golden-haired man blocked Ningchen's way and provoked him. Ningchen ignored him and continued to walk forward. Being ignored, the man was furious and punched the person in front of him. Bang! Just as the man's fist landed, a young man with thick blonde hair appeared between them and blocked the man's fist. "Brother Ning, long time no see." Hong Yuan looked at the young man beside him and smiled. "Third prince." On the street, the people saw him and were shocked. Ning Chen nodded and said calmly, "Long time no see. You may leave." Hong Yuan looked at the man in front of him indifferently, and then sent him flying with a bang. 10 feet away, the man fell to the ground. He got up awkwardly and did not dare to stay any longer. He quickly left. "Brother Ning, welcome to the sacred region." With the trouble solved, Hong Yuan looked back at the person in front of him and said seriously, "Thank you." Ning Chen replied and said, "I'll have to trouble you for a few days." Be it the pure land of Hades or the realm beyond heaven, it is the same. This is inevitable. It has nothing to do with him. Young Master Xiaobai said seriously, even if this kid didn't appear, the Nether King would still descend into the world, and the 100 races would still break out of the seal. This is the will of the world, and no one can change it. I'm not saying that he is to be blamed for these things. The knowing destiny state was born. Unfortunately, it's not luck but misfortune. This is his misfortune and the misfortune of the world. Peacock looked into the distance and said softly, "For the past 100 years, Master has been paying attention to this person and even wants him to become the new master of the realm of the gods. However, I don't think he will succeed." But young Master Xiaobai laughed and said, "Just because Master wants you to marry this knowing destiny Marquis?" Peacock ignored the former's teasing and continued calmly, "Because of his innate talent, and even more so because of his karma. Although innate talent is not an absolute factor that determines a martial artist's ultimate destination, it is still a crucial aid that cannot be ignored. We have all seen how difficult it was for him to break through to the immortal realm in the past 100 years, not to mention the celestial realm in the secular world. I do not deny his hard work and astonishing willpower, but since ancient times, how many mortals have been able to ascend to immortality? The celestial realm in the secular world is just too difficult for him. As for the karma that I mentioned, you should know what it is. When the eternal night descends upon the world, all living beings will have to undergo immeasurable tribulations. He borrowed the lives of all living beings to send Yama away, and the unfinished tribulations of all living beings will forever be on him. Young Master Xiaobai was silent. After a long time, he smiled bitterly and said, "Perhaps this is the tribulation that a successful person should face. Otherwise, Master wouldn't want this kid to become the new master of the realm of the gods. I respect Master's decision, but I will keep my own opinion." Peacock said seriously, "If one day I am wrong, then I will abide by the agreement and wholeheartedly assist the new master of the realm of the gods." "You are still so proud." Young Master Xiaobai sighed. "In fact, he has done well enough. Even those geniuses are far inferior to this Marquis Jiming. What he has done these years has already surpassed the limits of the younger generation. After all, he has only cultivated for a little more than 100 years. We can't ask for more." "It's not enough," Peacock said calmly. "He is the future master of the realm of the gods. Then he must surpass everyone. From now on, his opponents are not the younger generation, but the kings and emperors of the 100 races. No matter how long he has cultivated, the kings and emperors of the 100 races have already appeared. This is an indisputable fact. Peacock's match is the master of the human world who can calm the war. Otherwise, my existence is meaningless." "Peacock, don't be too harsh on yourself and that young man. You are still young. There is no need to force yourself so much." While they were talking, an old man with a walking stick appeared behind them. His face was full of vicissitudes of life. He was the master of the godly land, the emperor who protected the human world. He slowly walked over step by step. "Master! Master!" Peacock and young Master Xiaobai bowed respectfully. The old man nodded and looked at the human world with his weathered eyes. He said softly, "There are 9 supreme emperors in the primeval demon realm, but we humans only have less than 3. This gap cannot be closed in a short time." That young man opened the ancient battlefield and bought a lot of time for the human world. Now, There are people in the human world who have entered the 4th level. One day, we humans will have the strength to rival the 100 races. Master, do you really think that day will come? Young Master Xiaobai sighed. With 9 as the limit, the number of supreme emperors in the primeval demon realm has reached the limit. Although there will be supreme emperors in the human world in the future, according to the number of 4th level cultivators now, there will be at most 1 or 2. We are still far from the primeval demon realm. Have you forgotten how those young people sent away Pluto's pure land in the past? The old man looked into the distance and said seriously, compared to now, the situation in the divine prefecture was more than 10 times worse. That was true despair, and there was no light at all. But those young people still did it because they never gave up. Over the years, look at those young people from the divine prefecture. No matter what kind of situation they face, their optimism is far beyond that of ordinary people. I chose that young man because he will never give up. He will never give up on himself, and will never give up on others. Master, now that you mention it, I also feel that Marquis Ming is not simple. Young Master Xiaobai smiled. Will there be a second miracle? Peacock asked after a moment of silence. No matter whether it will appear or not, we should believe that there will be a day. The old man said softly, that young man who once created miracles is still working hard to create miracles. Perhaps he never thought of saving the world, but for the people he cherishes, he did so without hesitation. There is one more thing that you may not know. Speaking of this, the old man looked at the two and said, not long ago, I felt a strong burst of vitality before the Phoenix Nirvana. Something must have happened to the Phoenix body that the young man left in this world. Without the Phoenix body, his strength will weaken a lot. There is always a limit to a person's strength. This great calamity of the human race should not be borne by those young people. When the time is right, you should leave the divine realm to help him. Yes. Young Master Xiaobai replied softly. On the side, Peacock nodded slightly, but did not really express her opinion. The old man did not say much. The peacock goddess of each generation was the woman of destiny. Peacock's pride would not change because of anyone, not even him. However, if that young man wanted to fight against the king and emperor of the 100 tribes, Peacock's existence would be an indispensable help. Whether Peacock could be subdued or not depended on whether Phoenix could be reborn from the fire and rule the world. At the same time, in the endless starry sky, in the primeval demon realm, in the sanctuary deep in the western holy city, a white-haired figure in plain clothes walked over. He entered the royal family and negotiated with them. In the sanctuary, one palace after another spread along the rugged holy mountain. At the top, there was a towering holy palace. It was magnificent and extraordinary. Beside Ji Ming, Hong Yuan accompanied him as they walked along the path of the holy mountain. Along the way, the palaces that they had to pass through were empty. No one was guarding them. However, Ning Chen could clearly feel the terrifying aura in the depths of each palace. Each aura was not weaker than the late-stage king realm. It was very shocking. 12 palaces, 12 cultivators in the late-stage king realm or even the peak king realm. Even the celestial devil royal family could not compare. The Golden Lion clan was the legendary descendant of the sun god. Their bloodline was noble and extremely powerful. The sun god had disappeared from the world for so long that the legends were untraceable. However, no one had ever doubted the strength of the Golden Lion clan. Every leader of the Golden Lion clan had the strength to rival the strongest celestial devil royal family. The Golden Lions had the strongest attack in the world. Even the celestial devil royal family did not dare to go against them easily. After passing through the 12 palaces, the holy palace at the top of the holy mountain came into view. The huge and majestic building made the people below feel small. Brother Ning, please. Hong Yuan said softly. Thank you. Ning Chen replied softly and walked toward the holy palace. After a few breaths, the two stepped into the holy palace. In an instant, golden light rose from the 12 palaces at the bottom of the holy mountain. The 12 beams of light connected and blocked all the mysteries of the holy mountain. Chapter 1108. In the western sacred region, Ji Ming and Hong Yuan walked into the sacred palace. The huge palace was empty. They couldn't see anyone. The two walked forward and passed through the front hall. Their surroundings changed and a new scene appeared in front of them. Behind the sacred palace, a majestic statue of a god stood there, shining with golden light. In front of the statue, the throne was lying there quietly. There was no one in sight. "Father!" The two stopped 100 steps in front of the throne. Hong Yuan bowed and said respectfully, "I've brought the guests." As soon as he said that, golden light shone in front of the throne. A figure with an extremely powerful aura appeared. He was surrounded by golden light as if the sun god had descended. "Greetings, sacred lord." Ningchen bowed and said, 13th Prince, there's no need to be so polite." In front of the throne, the Emperor of the Golden Lion clan and the Sacred Region Lord responded calmly and continued, 13th Prince, why have you come to the Sacred Region from so far away? "I'm looking for someone." Ningchen said calmly, "Sacred Lord, you should already know what happened to the Fox clan. The princess of the Fox clan and I are engaged. I'm only here to find her." The Fox clan was exterminated in one day. No one knows why. 13th Prince, you were the first to arrive. Do you know what happened? The Sacred Lord of the Golden Lion clan asked. "It's a long story." Ningchen sighed softly and said, "A traitor has appeared in the Celestial Fiend Imperial clan and sent people to slaughter the entire Green Hill Fox clan. Their crimes are monstrous. Although I've executed the executioners they sent, the mastermind behind this is still at large. It's difficult to find them." "I see." The Sacred Lord of the Golden Lion clan nodded and said, 13th Prince, you've been searching for many days. Have you found anything? Ningchen shook his head and said, "Nothing. That's why I came to the Sacred Region to ask for your help." "To be honest, 13th Prince, I've been sending people to look for the princess of the Fox clan for the past few months. However, there hasn't been any news so far. However, I'll continue to send people to look for her. Once I find something, I'll inform you immediately," the Sacred Lord of the Golden Lion clan said calmly. "Thank you, Holy Lord." Ningchen thanked him and looked at the master of the Western Sanctuary. "There's one more thing. As a junior, I would like to remind the Holy Lord that the Sky Devil Imperial family has been in turmoil recently. The rebels have been inciting wars everywhere. I'm sure the Holy Lord has noticed that the Howling Moon clan, Phoenix clan, and Fox clan have all been attacked. Although the sanctuary is far away in the west, the rebels are powerful. 13th Crown Prince, I will keep your reminder in mind. I wonder what your Highness Master, the demonic Emperor of the Nine Serenities, thinks about the recent upheaval of the Celestial Devil Imperial family. 3 imperial families have been exterminated one after another. Are we just going to let it go like this?" Under the huge statue, the Saint Lord of the Golden Lion clan asked seriously. "The rebels are powerful and cannot be stopped in a day or two. However, Master's attitude is very firm. He will absolutely not change his position and wallow in the darkness," Ningchen reminded him without leaving a trace. When the sacred leader of the Golden Lion clan heard this, he squinted his eyes and said, "If that's the case, I am relieved." "Holy Lord," Ningchen said seriously, "the 5 imperial families have 5 emperors. If we work together, we will be invincible. If we separate, we will not be able to do anything. There are 9 emperors in the entire primordial demon realm. Besides Master and the masters of the 5 imperial families, there are only 3 left. If the 5 imperial families work together, they will be able to conquer the world, even if the Sky Devil Imperial family rebelled. Don't you think so, Holy Lord? We don't have a good reason to act. Moreover, the 5 imperial families are all very cautious. Who would dare to gamble the fate of their entire clan on others?" The sacred leader of the Golden Lion clan said straightforwardly. Although everyone knew about the current situation, the 5 imperial families were not all on good terms. It was easy to say that they would work together, but it was too difficult to do. No one could be sure that there were no puppets or spies of the Sky Devil Imperial family in the 5 imperial families. Working together was based on trust. What the 5 imperial families lacked the most now was trust. The Sky Devil Imperial family's rebellion has already affected other clans. If the 5 Imperial families send troops, they will have a good reason to do so. As for the problem of trust among the 5 Imperial families, someone has to take the first step. This first step might be the Sorcerer Tribe, or the Divine Capital Mountain, or the Golden Lion Clan. I think that as long as someone is willing to take the first step, the rebellion will be suppressed like a spark in a prairie. The sacred leader of the Golden Lion Clan was silent. After a long while, he said, "As long as someone is willing to send troops to quell the rebellion, the sanctuary will not fall behind. It is the responsibility of all clans to protect the peace of the primordial demon realm. The Golden Lion Clan will not shirk our responsibility." Ningchen had heard about this before. He understood the sacred leader's attitude. The Golden Lion Clan was not willing to be the first person to take the first step, but if the Imperial family took the lead, the Golden Lion Clan would be willing to help. Perhaps this was the attitude of all the other clans. Chapter 1109. On the Sacred Mountain in the Western Sacred Region, the Lord of the Sixth Palace made his move. The strongest person in the world who was closest to the Imperial path was ordered to test knowing destiny. A golden pillar of light fell from the sky like a vast ocean. Knowing destiny sensed it, and tens of thousands of swords flew out to block the attack. In the shocking vibration, the tens of thousands of swords were defeated, and the golden pillar of light also collapsed and disappeared. After probing with this move, Sarah stopped and did not make any more moves. On the peak of the sacred mountain, under the statue of the sun god, the Lord of the Sacred Region watched this scene with a strange look in his eyes. He knew Shama's strength very well. Even in the 12 palaces of the Sacred Region, he was definitely one of the top 2. When he used his full strength, he could even fight with the Imperial path. The fact that the 13th prince of the Sky Devil royal family could withstand Shama's attack was indeed extraordinary. What was even more shocking was that just now, he clearly felt that the 13th prince's cultivation had completely dissipated, as the rumors said. In that case, the 13th prince had blocked Shama's attack with just his extreme path strength. Not to mention the younger generation, even the kings who had lived for thousands of years would find it difficult to do so. The 13th prince's tolerance was really unfathomable. Outside the 6th palace, Ningchen looked back at the golden figure floating in the hall behind him and bowed politely. "Thank you for showing mercy, Lord." At the end of the eastern continent, there is a heavenly heart flower that can repair the injured body. If there is an opportunity, Your Highness can give it a try. In the 6th palace, Shama said calmly. Hearing this, Ningchen nodded slightly and said, "Thank you." After that, Ningchen did not stay any longer and continued to walk down the sacred mountain. Knowing destiny left. In the 12 palaces, the kings looked at the 6th palace and asked through telepathy, "Shama, did you show mercy?" In the 6th palace, Shama shook his head and said, "His sword has already reached the extreme realm. When the day comes, even you will not be able to match him." Hearing this, the palace lords looked serious. Shama's words could not be false. The 13th prince's potential was indeed shocking. At the foot of the sacred mountain, Ningchen said goodbye to Hong Yuan and rushed to the north. 2 months later, in the Sorcerer Tribe's territory in the northern continent, Ningchen appeared and walked directly to the Sorcerer Tribe's sacred land. Countless altars covered the vast and boundless wasteland. At the very center of the wasteland was an enormous altar. It was ancient and solemn, and it had existed for countless years. The king of the Fox clan wanted to avoid this calamity through marriage with the imperial family of the heavenly demonic tribe, but it backfired and hastened the arrival of this day. Emperor Go replied in front of the holy temple. Ningchen was silent. He had always been against the idea of fate. He did not believe that everything was decided by fate. If everything was decided by the heavens, then what was the point of all his hard work? "Your Highness, do you have any other questions?" Emperor Go asked again. The fate of the sorcerer tribe. Ningchen suppressed the waves in his heart and looked at the emperor in front of the holy temple. He said seriously, "Emperor Go, you can see the fate of the sorcerer tribe. Let's not beat around the bush. Everyone can see the current situation in the primordial demon territory. If someone wants to unify the primordial demon territory, the 5 imperial families will be the biggest obstacle. Especially the sorcerer tribe who can predict everything. They will definitely be the first opponent to be eliminated by the ambitious. Emperor Go sighed softly and said, "You came from the Western Sanctuary. Did you get the answer?" The Lord of the Sanctuary is wise and agreed to send troops. However, the Western Sanctuary is not the first target of the ambitious and will not be the first to send troops. Ning Chen said honestly. "So, you came to the Sorcerer Tribe?" Emperor Go narrowed his eyes and said, "You think the Sorcerer Tribe will be the first to stand out?" "It is not what I think. It is the result of the general situation. Of course, the Sorcerer Tribe can choose to submit. If so, I have nothing to say." Ning Chen said lightly. "How dare you?" Emperor Go's face turned cold and he said, "I do not want to hear such words a second time. Otherwise, even if you are Xian Zhiyo's disciple, you will not be able to leave the Sorcerer Tribe alive today." "I am sorry, I have misspoken." Ning Chen bowed and said apologetically. At the side, Tian Xen quietly listened to the conversation between the two and did not interrupt. Although his master and the 13th prince did not point it out, the Sky Devil Imperial family's ambition to rule the world was obvious. Once the Sky Devil Imperial family started to cause trouble, the Sorcerer Tribe, who had the ability to predict the future, would undoubtedly become the Sky Devil Imperial family's first target. After apologizing, Ning Chen stood up and looked in front of him. He did not back down and said seriously, "Emperor Go, the Sorcerer Tribe has no way out now. If we advance, we may be able to fight with the heavens. If we retreat, we will fall into the abyss. The end is set." In front of the Sage Hall, Emperor Go was silent. Although he knew that Ning Chen was telling the truth, he still could not make a decision. Seeing that Emperor Go was silent, Ning Chen took a step forward and said, "Senior Go, do you really want the Sorcerer Tribe's legacy to end in your generation?" Chapter 11:10. In the Sorcerer Tribe's holy land, Jiming met with the Sorcerer Tribe's sovereign. His aggressive words were merciless and the atmosphere froze for a moment. The inheritance had been passed down through 100 generations, and the importance of this responsibility had already been deeply ingrained into the bloodline of every single ruler. Even if they were peerless emperors or peerless emperors, they were still unable to avoid this responsibility. 100 years ago, there was an emperor in Great Xia who was forced to the point of insanity by Fan Lingyue, causing his temperament to change drastically. The rise and fall of a dynasty was too heavy of a responsibility. If one rose, their reputations would last for eternity. If one fell, their reputation would be tarnished for tens of thousands of years. No one was willing to become a sinner for all eternity. They would be too ashamed to face their ancestors in the Yellow Springs. In front of the Sorcerer Tribe's holy palace, Emperor Go remained silent for a long time. The legacy of the Sorcerer Tribe had been passed down for hundreds of generations. No matter what, it could not be cut off in her generation. "Emperor Go, as long as you agree to take this step, I am confident that I can convince the other royal families to send out their troops and fight against the evil demons together." On the altar, Ning Chen solemnly promised. Why is the 13th prince in such a hurry for the imperial families to send out their troops? Is it only because of the Fox clan's holy maiden? Emperor Go calmed himself down and looked at the young man on the altar in the distance. This is only one of the reasons. Just like how Senior Go Huang doesn't want to become a sinner of the shaman tribe, I'm a human, and I don't want to watch the demons wreak havoc and the human race fall. The Sorcerer Tribe can send out their troops first, but I have a condition. Emperor Go said in a deep voice, "Your Highness, you must guarantee that the 9 underworld demon emperor will not make a move. Otherwise, even if the 5 great imperial families join forces, the outcome will not change." They were all emperors, but the gap between them couldn't be ignored. The Celestial Devil Imperial family already had a demon emperor Kuan-i. If the Jiuyo demon emperor joined the battle, it would be a one-sided battle. Sure. Hearing the Sorcerer Tribe's sovereign's response, Ning Chen nodded solemnly and said, "I'll think of a way to delay Master. Senior Go Huang, you can rest assured. I will wait for your Highness' good news in the Sorcerer Tribe." Tianxing, send the guest off. Go Huang said calmly. Goodbye. Ning Chen cupped his fists and bowed. Your Highness, please. At the side, Tian Xian said softly. As his voice fell, a dim light rose up from the altar and swallowed up the two figures. After a few breaths of time, space trembled thousands of miles away, and two figures walked out. Your Highness will meet again. In the great desolate lands, Tian Xian looked at the person before him and said softly. Until we meet again. Ning Chen said his goodbyes and strode forward. Heaven Heart stared at the back of the former. After a long time, the former's figure faded and disappeared. Master, he's gone. Tian Xian appeared on the altar at the center of the sorcerer tribe's holy land. Tell the 12 shamans to prepare. The war is about to begin. In front of the sacred palace, Go Huang looked into the distance with a solemn expression. Yes. Tian Xian replied seriously. A month later, Knowing Destiny appeared in the eastern continent. He was wearing plain clothes and had white hair. 100 years ago, Fan Lingyue single-handedly pushed the world to attack the Xia. 100 years later, Ji Ming traveled to various regions, for the future of the human race, inciting the various royal families to join forces to slay the demons. It was unknown whether it was fate or fate, but the two people who hoped for peace the most had become the conspirators who started the war one after another. At the same time, in the primordial demon area, in the Three Emperor City, secret reports about Knowing Ming's whereabouts were sent to the mansions of the royal families. Have you found the whereabouts of the two princes of the Fox clan? In the mansions of the first and third crown princes, two figures asked in a deep voice. Your Highness, we haven't found anything yet. In front of the two royal mansions, Shadow replied. They had different standpoints but the same answer. Continue. Also, tell the Lord of the Sunrise Royal City where he is. In the first Crown Prince's mansion, the fifth prince's cold voice sounded. In the ancestral land of the heavenly demons, powerful auras appeared. After the ancient age, almost all the royal bloodlines had sealed themselves in the source of demons, waiting for the next era to come. The 13th prince has gone to the divine capital mountain. Among the many powerful heavenly demons, 3 extremely terrifying auras floated. One of them said coldly, he still hasn't given up on finding the two princesses of the Fox clan? Another person snorted. It seems that this child has fallen for her. I didn't expect that 9 Nether would choose to sink into depravity for a human girl. Today, his disciple would walk the same path. The strongest of the 3 auras sighed softly. At the same time, in the royal palace of the 9 Nether King's mansion, demonic flames circled around. A majestic and domineering man appeared. He looked to the far east as a stream of light flashed past. Everyone had their own path. No matter what Ning Chen chose in the future, he wouldn't interfere. His only hope was that Ning Chen would choose this path himself and never regret it. On the divine capital mountain, there were many steep peaks. On the highest peak, there were many palaces that were comparable to palaces in the mortal world. In the divine capital, a tall figure in dark red armor stood quietly, looking down at the world. He was extraordinarily handsome. Behind him, a white-haired young man in plain clothes had been there for a long time. Look at the scenery of the mortal world. How beautiful it is. Unfortunately, it will soon be destroyed in the flames of war. The Lord of the Divine Capital stood on the peak and said plainly, only through destruction can it be even more beautiful on the day of rebirth, Ning Chen said calmly. If it's completely destroyed, how can it be reborn? The Lord of the Divine Capital said coldly. Then we'll rebuild it. As long as we win this war, the future primitive demon realm will no longer be a demon realm. Ning Chen said seriously. You're very bold, the Lord of the Divine Capital said calmly. What do you think will happen to you if the 3 demon emperors find out that you were the one who started this war? You flatter me. Ning Chen looked humble. I don't have the right to start a war. This is the general trend. I'm just a messenger. It's not important. Ah. The Lord of the Divine Capital smiled faintly and said, go. As long as I see the situation you've described, I'll naturally send troops to help. I'll take my leave. Ning Chen bowed, then turned around and walked out of the divine capital. Half a month later, at the end of the eastern continent, Ningchen walked over. The barren polar region was cold and silent. The lord of the sixth palace in the western sanctuary had said that there was a heavenly heart flower here. Whether it was true or not, he had to come and take a look. The legend of the heavenly heart flower had been around since ancient times. Although it wasn't as divine as the divine flower or the immortal peach tree, its effects were still miraculous. Legend had it that the heavenly heart flower had the miraculous ability to revive the dead. As long as there was still a breath left, it could immediately revive someone who was half a step away from death. Ningchen didn't believe these rumors. He had once owned the immortal divine tree, so he knew more about such divine items than anyone else. Therefore, reviving the dead was only a legend. At the end of the polar region, clouds and mist filled the air. Many towering peaks reached into the clouds like heavenly pillars. It was a spectacular sight. It was the first time Ningchen had seen such a miraculous scene. He couldn't help but stop and look at it for a long time. In the memories of his first life, there was a legend in the east. There was a heavenly pillar at the end of the world that held up the 9 heavens and stabilized the land. It was very important. At that time, he had always thought that it was just a legend. Now that he saw it, he realized that the world was big and full of wonders. One would never know how high the sky was from the bottom of a well. Ningchen took a step forward and soared into the air. He left no traces behind as he stepped on the snow. His figure was like a floating leaf as he soared into the 9 heavens. A white-clothed figure soared up the huge peaks. He was so fast that it was hard to catch sight of him. The 9 heavens were high and covered in snow. The higher one went, the lower the temperature. Gradually, the entire sky seemed to freeze, making it difficult to advance. Ningchen looked at the sky. He didn't stop. He shouted, and a sword aura spread out around him. He turned into a sword. In an instant, a white sword light soared into the 9 heavens and slashed open the frozen sky. Cold winds blew in the 9 heavens. The white sword light scattered. Ningchen took a step forward and arrived at the peak. He looked into the distance, searching for the heavenly heart flower. Several towering peaks of similar height stood before him. When he looked into the distance, he saw white snow. It had been frozen for 10,000 years and had never changed. After looking into the distance for a long time, Ningchen didn't see any signs of life. He exerted force with his feet, and a huge rock was sent flying. Ningchen took another step forward, and his figure soared 100,000 zhang away. He arrived above the huge rock, and with another step, he traveled another 100,000 zhang. After a few breaths, the white-clothed figure arrived at the peak of the opposite peak. Even though he had lost his cultivation, the dangers of heaven and earth couldn't stop him with his strong physical body. After searching for half a day, Ningchen found nothing. The sun set in the west, and the sky of the entire primordial demon realm started to darken. Ningchen frowned. He knew that he was not fated. He didn't want to waste any more time and flew down the peak. Just at this moment, a golden sword light soared through the sky from afar. It was surrounded by golden flames, and its might was shocking. Ningchen's face sank as he fell. He took a step in the air and quickly stopped himself. Ningchen stood between the peaks. He looked at the figure in front of him, and a serious look flashed in his eyes. The young man holding a sword came from afar. He looked cold, and his killing intent surged. He didn't hide it at all. "You guys come out as well," Ningchen said coldly as he glanced at the two sides. As soon as he said that, many black-clothed figures appeared on the two sides. They wore black veils and covered their faces. "I didn't expect that crown prince to collude with outsiders just to kill me." Ningchen looked at the Lord of Sunrise Royal City and said calmly. In the air, Ness Yao's figure flashed, and the better cloud divine sword was unsheathed. In an instant, the wind blew and the clouds surged. With a boom, the devil's sword blocked the divine weapon. Ningchen looked at the Lord of Sunrise Royal City who was right in front of him, and said with a calm expression, "This is the last time. What I owe you I've paid." As soon as he said that, Ningchen stepped into the air and entered the 9 heavens. The devil's sword reflected the moonlight, and an earth-shattering power spread out rapidly. Great Sword Realm, Sword Emperor. Above the Sword Realm, a bloody light rose. On the Moon Devil Divine Sword, countless red sword energy gathered and formed a realm of its own. A dragon among men, an emperor among swords. Knowing destiny held the sword and slashed down. The most extreme sword, with endless destructive power, appeared to destroy the world. The unforgettable sword became the last memory of this life. Below, dozens of black-clothed figures couldn't dodge in time and were instantly swallowed by the sword light. Chapter 11:11. At the easternmost end of the primal devil realm, a single sword strike shook the world. Below the sky-piercing mountain, a blood-red sword light slashed apart the mortal world. Its world-shaking might terrified thousands of devils. In the sky, black-clothed figures could not dodge in time and were instantly swallowed by the sword light. Blood splattered down like rain, dyeing the sky-piercing mountain red. At the center of the battlefield, Yu Yao looked at the blood-red sword light descending from the sky. He swung B-Cloud to receive it. With a rumble, the extreme power of the sword suppressed the king. Yu Yao's figure continued to fall. 10 meters, 300 meters, 3,000 meters. At 3,000 meters, Yu Yao's figure stopped. The blood-red sword light disappeared, and the remaining power dispersed. Drip. Crimson blood dripped down from the sky. The scorching three-legged golden crow's blood could not be stopped by the cold. White mist rose and quickly evaporated. So you have such extraordinary combat strength. This is good too. I can send you to the next world with a clear conscience. Seeing that the person in the sky was not crippled like what the Heavenly Devil Clan said, Yu Yao coldly said. Then, he took a step in the air and soared into the sky. Boom! With a violent tremor, the two divine weapons clashed again. The sharp sword energy shook continuously and slashed at the sky-piercing mountain. Instantly, huge rocks flew and smashed towards the two. Yu Yao and Ning Qin swung their swords to knock away the huge rocks. Their figures intertwined with each other, and their sword light crisscrossed. Behind the two, the sky-piercing mountain received the aftermath of the battle. The sword energy broke into the mountain, and the sky-piercing mountain shook violently, showing signs of collapse. At this moment, in the depths of the Heavenly Devil ancestral land, a mighty figure suddenly opened his eyes. Murderous intent surged around him, and his face was filled with anger. What happened? 7 luminaries and 8 desolation asked in confusion. Someone is fighting on the sky-piercing mountain. First Kunyi Demon Emperor said solemnly. So what? 7 luminaries Demon Emperor frowned, still confused. You don't understand. Nothing must happen to the sky-piercing mountain. After saying that, First Kunyi Demon Emperor took a step forward and disappeared. It's been a long time since I saw Big Brother so nervous. 8 Desolation Demon Emperor said. Perhaps the towering sky peak has secrets that we don't know about. As for what they are, we'll have to wait until my brother returns, the 7 Brilliance Demon Emperor said sternly. At the same time, 9 Nether appeared in the 9 Nether King's residence. He looked to the east with a solemn expression. Why would Ning Qin go to towering sky peak? In the 6th palace of the Western Sacred Realm, a figure of golden light floated up and down. Shama opened his eyes and looked towards the distant east. Bits of flowing light flashed past. He still went. Sarah! At the peak of the sacred mountain, beneath the statue of the sun god, the sacred lord walked out and asked, Did you say something to him? In the 6th palace, Sarah said calmly, I told him where the heaven's heart flower is. He must have gone to look for it. Hearing this, the lord of the sanctuary frowned slightly but did not say anything. Shama's identity was different from the other Holy Region Palace lords. In the entire Holy Region, everyone worshipped the sun god. Only Shama was born with a Buddha body. It was said that he could converse with the gods and Buddhas in the sky and knew many things that ordinary people did not. Because of Shama's identity, even he could not blame him too much. Sacred Lord, there is no need to worry. Even if towering sky peak is destroyed, someone will repair it in time. This sky will not collapse. In the 6th palace, Sarah said softly. At the extreme east, in front of towering sky peak, The battle between the two had reached a critical juncture. Bearing a blood feud, Ness Yao's battle strength was raised to the peak of his life. Golden flames surrounded his body, and the image of a gigantic three-legged golden crow appeared behind him. With the support of the phenomenon, his battle strength increased by several folds. Divine weapons clashed, sparks flew in all directions. His heart was filled with vengeance, and his body was filled with guts. He had already disregarded his life and death. The sword in his hand was a divine weapon that could cut through the extremes. An extraordinary opponent with a world-shaking battle spirit. Ning Chen did not dare to be careless in the slightest. Sword intent rose around his body, and he similarly unleashed his full battle strength. Great Sun Forbidden Art, 3 points return to origin. With the forbidden art in hand, burning the sky and boiling the sea, Ness Yao's golden flames soared into the 9 heavens. Amidst the shocking scene, the golden crow's wings flapped, turning into a golden sun, and crashed towards the figure in front of him. Seeing this, Ning Chen's expression sank slightly. The tip of his sword turned, and countless streams of swords gathered, turning into a barrier in front of him. In the blink of an eye, the great Sun Forbidden Art crashed into the barrier of thousands of swords. The enormous impact shook, and the white-clothed figure was immediately sent flying, crashing into towering Sky Peak. A terrifying loud noise resounded. Towering Sky Peak, which had been ravaged since the start of the battle, could no longer endure the powerful impact, and began to crumble inch by inch from the center of the mountain. Amidst the shocking scene, huge rocks fell like rain. A towering Sky Peak was destroyed, and the skies of the entire Primal Devil realm began to shake violently. The expressions of all the 4th-level practitioners in the Primal Devil realm changed. They looked towards the distant east, and their faces were filled with shock. Between the Primal Devil realm and the extreme east, devilish clouds rapidly spread. The sovereigns of devils released their origin arts, and with their supreme cultivation, they forcefully stabilized the shaking heaven and earth. At the extreme east, under the crumbling towering Sky Peak, a white-clothed figure flashed out. Her figure shifted amidst the rain of rocks falling from the sky, and in an instant, she once again appeared in front of the king. The devilish sword slashed down with a force of 1,000 kilograms. With the addition of 100 times the gravity, Yu Yao simply felt his body sinking, and he could not help but fall downwards. In the sky, Ning Chen stepped on a huge rock, and his figure flashed out like a sword, charging downwards together. While falling downwards, Yu Yao looked at the figure hurriedly rushing towards him. Without the slightest concern for his own safety, he let out a low shout, and his forbidden art appeared once again. Great Sun Forbidden Art, 3 crows returned to the sea. Pointing his finger over the sword, golden flames burned the skies. Behind Yu Yao, 3 golden crows appeared at the same time. With a forbidden art, it instantly destroyed a third of the king's foundation. Blood mist filled the air, and fused into the golden crows' bodies. In the next moment, the 3 golden crows charged out at the same time. Their destructive power was unstoppable. Sword art, 3 lights shine together. Forced to his limits, a sword appeared on his sword. Ning Chen executed his ultimate move, and 3 figures appeared. Human, deity, and devil performed their martial arts. 3 sword lights broke through the sky at the same time. The golden crows and the sword lights collided, and the aftermath was vast. The 2 of them bore the brunt of the impact, and were instantly sent flying. With a boom, Yu Yao's figure crashed onto the ground. Dust flew everywhere, covering the sky and the sun. In the sky, Ning Chen was also struck by the aftermath. His figure was sent flying, crashing towards a mountain in the distance. A few breaths later, amidst the intense tremors, the second heaven-raising mountain was knocked down by the knowing destiny mountain that was sent flying. In the distance, within the rapidly spreading devilish clouds, Devil Emperor First Kuan's expression changed once again. Looking at the gigantic hole in the sky, his heart was filled with rage. Is the sky going to collapse? At this moment, throughout the Primal Devil realm, even ordinary people could feel the world-shaking tremors. Their eyes looked towards the sky, and their faces were filled with shock. In the eastern sky, the heaven-raising mountain collapsed, and a gigantic hole appeared. Such a terrifying scene had never been seen before. In the battlefield, Ning Chen and Yu Yao looked towards the sky at the same time. A moment later, their expressions changed. Above the 9 heavens, thousands of meteors fell from the sky. Blazing flames coiled around them, and like a rain of fire, they rapidly fell. The scene of doomsday seemed to be a punishment from the heavens. Under countless shocked gazes, a rain of meteors appeared from the hole in the eastern sky and fell into the mortal realm. Chapter 11:12. At the far eastern end, the heaven-raising peak was destroyed, and a meteor shower fell into the mortal realm. The scene of doomsday shook the world. Right below the meteor shower, Ning Chen and Yu Yao quickly regained their senses from the shock. Without any hesitation, their figures flew out, fleeing for their lives with all their might. Boom! In the next moment, countless meteors smashed down. An intense tremor resounded, and the earth sank, collapsing and collapsing. The sky in the east collapsed, and the balance of the entire primordial devil realm was destroyed. The various continents shook violently, and strange signs appeared at the same time. The sky is collapsing. On the various continents, practitioners looked towards the east, and their expressions turned solemn. At the far eastern end, within the meteor shower, 2 figures quickly charged out, one after another. 5,000 kilometers away, their figures stopped. They looked at each other and could see the shock in each other's eyes. Ha! Right at this moment, a deep shout resounded from afar. Devilish clouds rapidly approached, and within the devilish clouds, a towering devilish figure stood tall. Devilish aura surged, blocking the gigantic hole in the sky. Outside the hole, the meteor shower continuously smashed down. Devil Emperor First Kuan received all of the attacks, and his devilish body grew. Using his supreme cultivation, he forcefully held up the tilting heaven and earth. Immediately search for heaven-raising rocks and repair the heaven-raising peak. Quickly! Devil Emperor First Kuan angrily said. Facing the Emperor's order, Ning Chen and Yu Yao did not hesitate and respectfully accepted the order. The grudge between us will be settled in the future, Yu Yao coldly said, and then his figure flew out, rushing towards the distance. Ning Chen did not pay attention to him. He turned to look at the 2 collapsed heaven-raising peaks, and a thoughtful look flashed past his eyes. A moment later, he took a step and flew in the opposite direction. Ha! Seeing the 2 leave, Devil Emperor First Kuan once again shouted. Devilish aura surged from his body, and with an unprecedented ability he stood tall, supporting the collapsing heaven and earth. In the sky, a gigantic hole appeared. Meteors from the starry sky continuously fell, crashing into the barrier of devilish aura. From the north and south, 2 figures sped forward, dragging huge boulders that were the size of small mountains. They arrived at the collapsed heaven-raising peak, and with a step, they leapt up. With a boom, the boulders fell, and waves of dust rolled. The 2 figures once again turned back, and flew towards the distance. For a day and a night, the rulers used their bodies to mend the sky. Their cultivation bases were unparalleled, and a trace of fatigue appeared in their eyes. Under the duo's efforts, the collapsed heaven pillar peak gradually recovered. Countless boulders were piled up, reaching a height of 100 zhang, 1,000 zhang, 100 zhang, and so on. After 1 day and 1 night, the 2 heaven-upholding peaks had been repaired. The 2 of them were also on the verge of exhaustion and no longer had the strength to continue fighting. Before his eyes, the towering mountain appeared once more. However, the cracks on the mountain were clearly visible, and it was no longer as complete as before. All of you back down? Demon Emperor Kuan Yi said coldly. Yes. The 2 of them bowed in unison and quickly left. After the 2 left, the demonic chi around the first demon emperor continued to spread, merging into the 2 towering sky peaks. Gradually, the demonic cultivator's body began to petrify, and the cracks between the 2 towering sky peaks began to heal. 5,000 kilometers away, the 2 figures appeared. Carrying his sword, Nes Yao left without saying another word. No matter how much they had enjoyed each other's company in the past, in the face of his father's death, all friendship had turned to smoke. The figure in the distance was dressed in a scarlet robe inlaid with gold. The sheath beyond sword aura was ice-cold, no longer as clear as before. Watching the former leave, Ningchen retracted his gaze and lightly sighed in his heart. Some things, once done, would not be regretted. The grudge between him and Ness Yao could no longer be resolved. Only fresh blood could wash it away. Behind him, the heaven-upholding peak stood tall between the heavens and the earth. Demonic chi lingered around it, and it was slowly and visibly recovering. 5,000 kilometers away, Ningchen stood quietly. After a long while, he turned and left. Though he did not find the Heaven Heart Flower, being able to trap the first demon emperor here was still an unexpected gain. As long as the heaven-upholding peak was not repaired, the first demon emperor would not be able to leave. He would not waste such a precious opportunity. 2 days later, in the territory of the Stone Clan, Ningchen walked over. Thousands of kilometers away. Divine Spiritual Mountain, the land of inheritance of the Stone Clan. Back then, Xianjuyo destroyed the mountain with a single palm strike, and even now, it had yet to fully recover. Outside the mountain, Ningchen stopped. Looking at the Divine Spiritual Mountain in front of him, he spoke. Junior Ningchen requests an audience with Senior Stone Emperor. In the Divine Spiritual Mountain, an angry snort sounded. The Stone Emperor opened his eyes and looked at the young figure outside the mountain. He coldly said, 13th Prince, have you come to the wrong place? My Stone Clan is simple, so I won't invite you in. Please leave. Ningchen revealed a smile and said, this junior is here on the orders of my master. Since Senior Stone Emperor is unwilling to meet me, this junior will not force you. This junior will pass on a message and leave. Senior Stone Emperor, the Divine Spiritual Mountain is blocking the path of my Sky Devil Imperial Clan to the east. You should make way. Impudent. In the Divine Spiritual Mountain, an angry roar sounded. True energy surged out of the Stone Emperor's body, and his killing intent could not be concealed. Outside the Divine Spiritual Mountain, Ningchen stood amidst the raging waves, but there was no fear on his face. He knew very well that the Stone Emperor did not dare to touch him now. I have passed on the message. This junior will take his leave. After saying that, Ningchen cupped his fists and bowed, then turned and left. In the Divine Spiritual Mountain, the Stone Emperor could not suppress his anger, but he did not stop him. Half a month later, in the southern continent, Ningchen had been searching for several days. He did not hide his tracks at all. In the purple scale abyss, under the bottomless abyss, the auras of the scaled race's elites could be vaguely seen, waiting for the 13th Prince of the Sky Devil Imperial Clan to arrive. However, after waiting for several days, the figure they were waiting for never showed up. Another half a month later, Ningchen left the southern continent and returned to the primordial demon area. Strange. In the purple scale abyss, many powerful figures were puzzled. That 13th prince had traveled all over the 5 continents and visited the 4 great imperial clans. Even the stone race, which he had an old grudge with, was no exception. Why did he only pass by the scaled race and not enter? In the primordial demon area, Ningchen had returned. After traveling all over the 5 regions, he was covered in dust and could not hide his exhaustion. Perhaps it was because his cultivation had been suppressed by the celestial gate, but Ningchen's face was less cold and more emotional. He's back. The moment Zhi Ming stepped into the primordial demon area, the various imperial clans in the 3 imperial cities all received a secret report. For a moment, the silent 3 imperial cities once again surged with undercurrents. In the end, he still came back alive. In the Crown Prince's residence, Xianjun looked at the secret report and sighed. If we don't get rid of this person, he will definitely become a huge threat. Elder brother, there are still a few days before he returns to the 3 imperial cities. Please make a decision quickly. The 5th prince said with a cold expression. We can't take any more risks. Xianjun shook his head and said, after several failed assassinations, he was already prepared. With his current strength, unless we use the battle power of 3 or more kings, it will be very difficult to take his life. However, even I can't easily use the battle power of a king. If 9th Imperial Uncle finds out, there will be endless trouble. But The fifth prince looked anxious and was interrupted just as he was about to speak. Say no more. Even if 13th prince returns, it doesn't mean that we will definitely lose. Let's just wait and see. In the southwest of the primordial demon area, demonic aura filled the sky. A majestic palace collapsed, and a king's body that was thousands of feet tall suddenly exploded, dyeing the city red with blood. After taking back the city, Xian Luo looked into the distance with murderous intent. Now it was that brat's turn. Ningchen said calmly, but it's all settled now. You have caused a lot of trouble in the easternmost region. The 3 demon emperors will not let this go. You have to be mentally prepared, Xian Jiuyo said seriously. Disciple understands. Ningchen nodded and said, I was also schemed against and had no choice but to act to protect myself. I didn't expect that it would cause such a huge disaster. He had never heard of the towering sky peak secret before. It could be seen that even in the celestial devil imperial family, very few people knew about it. This time, the towering sky peak was destroyed and Dongfang Tian was broken. This secret was known to the world, and the demon emperor First Kuan would definitely be furious. However, as he said, he was schemed against, and the fault was not his. Even if the demon emperor First Kuan wanted to blame him, some people in the 3 imperial cities would not be able to get away with it. The towering sky peak will take some time to repair. Before the demon emperor First Kuan returns, no one will mention this again. You should stay in the imperial city and try not to go out, Xian Jiuyo said. Yes. Ningchen accepted the order. All right, I have nothing else to do here. You should go back and rest as soon as possible, Xian Jiuyo said calmly. Disciple will take his leave. Ningchen bowed respectfully again, and then turned to leave. At the same time, on the central altar of the sorcerer tribe's sanctuary, Emperor Go appeared. He formed a seal with his hands, and in an instant, the wind and clouds surged in the sky. Beside him, Tian Xen stood quietly with a tinge of nervousness. Emperor Go showed his imperial power. In the sky, the sound of wind and thunder resounded, and a blurry and illusory scene appeared in the wind and thunder, disappearing in an instant. After a long while, the sound of wind and thunder stopped. Emperor Go retracted his aura, and exhaustion flashed in his eyes. Master! Tian Xen opened his mouth and said, Did you see something? The sorcerer tribe is going to face a great calamity. Emperor Go sighed softly. When Tian Xen heard this, he was shocked. But the demon emperor First Kuan is trapped in the easternmost land, and the 13th prince has promised to hold back the demon emperor of the abyss. The current situation should be more advantageous for us. It's hard to predict. Perhaps I have missed something. Emperor Go said solemnly. However, no matter what, the sorcerer tribe must send out their troops as soon as possible. The 13th prince is right. Only by fighting against the heavens can we have a chance. Otherwise, we can only wait for death. I have already given Master's order to the 12 sorcerer empresses. As long as Master gives the order, they can send out their troops at any time, Tian Xen said seriously. Emperor Go nodded and looked at the primordial demon area in the distance. His expression gradually turned cold. Internal and external problems. Now that there are external problems, let's see when the internal problems will appear. In the 13th prince's residence in the 3rd imperial city, Ning Chen had returned. Shiyu and Shiqing had already received the news and were waiting for him at the residence. Your Highness. In front of them, the white-haired figure was so familiar. Shiyu and Shiqing quickly stepped forward and bowed with joy. No need to be so polite, Ningchen said with a smile. After so many days, seeing the 2 girls again made him feel much closer. 13th brother. At this moment, a warm voice sounded outside the residence. As soon as the voice sounded, a slightly sinister face appeared in front of the residence. It was the 9th prince, who had previously sided with the 7th prince. Ningchen turned around and smiled when he saw the person who had come. 9th brother. 13th brother, you have been away for so long. You have kept me waiting, Xian Ke said with a smile. I had to leave because of some personal matters. Sorry. Ningchen said calmly, But now that the matter has been resolved, I am back. Xian Ke heard this and narrowed his eyes. Compared to when he had left, his 13th brother seemed a little different. Before this, he felt that his 13th brother was always hiding his sharpness. But now, his 13th brother was like a sword that was about to be unsheathed, sharp and threatening. At the same time, in the southwest of the primordial demon area, Xian Luo left the royal city and headed east. Prince, the royal family is deep. Are you really going? An old figure asked worriedly. He's there. How can I not go? Xian Luo spoke coldly, and then he strode off into the distance. At the same time, in the purple scale abyss, an unprecedented tremor sounded. At the bottom of the abyss, the scale emperor opened his eyes and murderous intent surged. Outside the abyss, Jean Lin felt it. She was shocked and said, "Grandfather, what happened?" "Something happened to your brother," the scale emperor said in a low voice. Jean Lin was shocked and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Her brother's talent and strength were better than hers. How could the heavens beyond Earth's human tribe threaten her brother? What's more, her father was there. The scale emperor's face was gloomy. Now, the Queen Mother's seal was getting stronger and stronger. Even sending messages had become difficult. If they did not break the seal now and the seal was completely repaired, their years of planning would go to waste. The news from the heavens beyond Earth was that although they had obtained the Western King's hairpin, Di Mingtian had sacrificed his life for it. What was worse was that the Western King's hairpin's immortal power was severely depleted and was far from enough to break the seal left behind by the Queen Mother. Chapter 11:14. Primordial Demon Domain, 3rd Imperial City. The bright moon shone high in the sky. Under the moon, a white-robed figure danced with a sword, and the world was silent. There was no wind, no electric charge, no stormy waves. After losing his cultivation, the sword had returned to its original state. Every move was simple, without the slightest flourish. Not far away, Xiu and Shiqing looked at the figure dancing in front of them and gradually lost their minds. His Highness is so powerful. After a long time, Shiqing came back to her senses and exclaimed, "You can understand it?" Xiu asked curiously. "I can't." Shiqing shook her head decisively and said, "Then how do you know that His Highness is powerful?" Xiu said helplessly, "I just can't understand it. That's why I think His Highness is powerful." Shiqing said matter-of-factly. Xiu couldn't help but laugh when she heard that, not knowing what to say. Just as the two women were talking, suddenly, a dark red figure fell from the sky. The powerful palm force was earth-shattering. In the residence, Ningchen sensed it. Sword chi surged out from his body and soared into the sky. The rumbling sound resounded throughout the Crown Prince's residence. The demonic aura that reappeared was so familiar that it made people want to get rid of it immediately. Xian Luo. Looking at the person who came, Ning Chen's expression turned cold and he said in a deep voice, "Kid, long time no see." Xian Luo said indifferently, "Long time no see." As soon as the voice fell, the white-robed figure moved, showing no mercy, and the sword edge was about to kill. "Good." Xian Luo's face was filled with madness. With a roar, demonic aura surged out, and demonic aura soared into the sky. The divine sword shook the demonic aura, and the sharp sword edge approached inch by inch, stopping an inch away from the heart. Invisible sword. Ningchen pointed at the sword edge, and the sword edge moved even closer. The rapidly spinning sword aura gathered from all directions, trying to break the demonic cultivator's protective Zhenyuan. "I haven't seen you for many years, and your sword has become sharper." Xian Luo looked at the young figure in front of him and said coldly, "Unfortunately, no matter how many years have passed, you're still the same as before, a stray dog." With a loud bang, demonic aura surged, shaking the battle. Xian Luo turned his palm, and thousands of demons appeared, roaring into the sky. "Back down." Ningchen formed a sword with his fingers. Sword chi gushed out, knocking the two women out of the battle. Then he stomped his foot. In an instant, The entire Crown Prince's palace was enveloped by the light of restrictive spells, sealing the entire space. With the space sealed, Ningchen no longer had any worries. He spun his sword and slashed the demon with the divine sword. The rapidly moving shadow slashed apart the 10,000 demonic phantoms. Chapter 11:15. It was a life and death battle. The ultimate moves of the swordsman and the demonic cultivator were unleashed. Their destructive power frightened both humans and gods. The Sword Emperor and the God of Thunder, humans and demons could not coexist. They clashed in the god restriction. It was a shocking scene. The sword realm crumbled inch by inch. Countless sword lights disappeared. At the same time, the demonic aura dissipated. Arg! Two groans sounded. Blood splattered everywhere. Ji Ming and Xian Luo were both sent flying by the shockwave. Both sides were injured. It was a draw. No one had the upper hand. The blood-stained divine sword made a piercing sound. Demonic aura surged around Ningchen. The demonic body that had been hidden for a long time appeared and joined the battle. The two bodies appeared at the same time. The battle changed again. Just as the battle was about to start, a silver spear light broke through the sky and crashed into the god restriction. The god restriction could not withstand the shocking power. Cracks appeared and it was about to collapse. Ningchen felt it. His eyes dimmed. He retracted his aura and the demonic body returned to his body. 13th brother, are you in trouble? As he spoke, the demonic weapon broke the god restriction. The silver spear stabbed into the ground. The spear was surrounded by silver light. Shaoyin. Seeing the silver spear vibrating on the ground, Ningchen's expression turned serious. It was the demonic weapon, Shao. The Crown Prince finally made a move. Ningchen shifted his gaze to the Crown Prince's palace in the distance. A strange light flashed in his eyes. He had always been on guard against this Crown Prince. Among all the princes of the Sky Devil imperial family, the Crown Prince's cultivation and status were far above the other princes. The Crown Prince's demonic weapon was called Shaoyin. It was a rare weapon even in the primordial demon realm. It's just a small matter. You don't have to worry about it. Ningchen bowed in the direction of the Crown Prince's residence. Is that so? Xianzhen's voice sounded in the sky. 13th brother, are you sure this person is not an assassin? He is not. Ningchen glanced at Xian Luo, who was not far away, and replied calmly. An icy cold smile appeared on the corners of Xian Luo's mouth. Needless to say, this kid's reaction was really not bad. Anyone in the world could be called an assassin, and only this young man before him couldn't. In Primordial Devil region, he was the only one who knew the true identity of the young man before him. Once his identity was exposed, even Xian Juyo would not be able to save his life. The spiritual leader of the inner realm and the great benefactor of the human race in the outer realm. No matter what his identity was, it was enough for him to die several times over. That's good. Xianzhen's voice reverberated in the air. Stranger, I admire you. Chapter 11:16. Undercurrents were surging in the three imperial cities. After Ji Ming's return, the situation became even more complicated. The competition between the two princes was getting more and more intense. The seventh prince died in Dragon Emperor Mountain, and the three princes were out of balance. The conflict between the first and third princes was on the table, forcing all the forces in the imperial city to pick a side as soon as possible. The three demon emperors had never cared about the competition between the princes. As long as they didn't do anything that went against the fundamental interests of the imperial family, whoever could win the throne would depend on their own ability. Nobody had imagined that Ji Ming would become the fourth crown prince of the royal family. What was more unexpected was that the seventh crown prince had an accident in Dragon Emperor Mountain, which directly led to the fierceness of the competition for the throne. The choice of the 13th crown prince who was not qualified to inherit the throne would directly influence the final result of the competition. After returning for several years, all the members of the imperial family had seen how powerful the 9th Serenity Demon Emperor was. He was even comparable to the head of the three demon emperors, the first Kunyi Demon Emperor. As the only disciple of the 9th Serenity Demon Emperor, the 13th prince's status became very important. In front of the imperial palace of the 3rd prince's residence, Xian Qing in white stood quietly, thinking. Today, the 13th prince came to borrow his troops, which was a rare opportunity for him. However, Xian Luo's identity was also unusual. According to the spy he sent, Xian Luo was now the lord of the Southwest King's territory. His strength was unfathomable, and even the previous Southwest King was defeated by him. It was said that the previous Southwest King was already in the late stage of the King realm. Xian Luo could defeat him, either he was more powerful, or he had a trump card that no one knew about. No matter what the reason was, Xian Luo wouldn't be easy to deal with. If he wanted to help the 13th prince get rid of him, he would have to use his hidden strength. Whether it was worth exposing his trump card or not, he had to seriously consider it. The night gradually darkened. In the 13th prince's residence, Ning Chen was sitting in the main hall, carefully wiping the black saber in his hand against the light. Not far away, Xiu and Shiqing saw what he was doing and felt a chill in their hearts. They knew that the prince's sword cultivation was extraordinary. Even those so-called favored ones couldn't reach him. However, it was their first time seeing the prince use a saber. Outside the hall, the night was getting darker. The entire imperial city was completely dark. It was a dark and windy night. Inside the hall, Ning Chen stood up and walked out with Kuang Gu in his hand. "Your Highness," Shiqing said worriedly. "Be careful." Ning Chen turned around and smiled. "It's just a small matter. If you're tired, you can rest. There's no need to wait here." After he finished speaking, Ning Chen continued walking forward. Not long after, he disappeared into the night. In the palace, Xiu and Shiqing looked at each other, unable to hide their worry. In the 3 royal city, dark clouds gradually covered the cold moon, making the night seem even darker. Suddenly, with a rumbling sound, a bolt of lightning tore through the night sky, illuminating the royal city. On the street, a plain-clothed figure held a black saber. He did not cover his face or change his clothes as he walked toward the northwest of the royal city. The lights in the Marquis Qingyuan manor were lit up. Marquis Qingyuan was once one of the imperial family's senior elders. Now that he was old, his qi and blood were withered, and he was enjoying the rest of his life in his manor. Although Marquis Qingyuan Fu was no longer as glorious as it was in the past, the current Marquis Qingyuan had an extremely high seniority and had an extremely special position in the imperial family. As early as 100 years ago, Marquis Qingyuan Fu had already clearly stated that they stood on the eldest crown prince's side. Everyone in 3 imperial cities knew this. Amidst the muffled sounds of thunder, a plain-clothed figure strode over in front of Marquis Qingyuan Fu. Her entire body was filled with killing intent that was sharp and bone-piercing. "Who are you?" In front of Marquis Qingyuan Fu, 2 imperial guards saw the approaching person and blocked the path. However, just as the words fell, a black saber light cut through the darkness, bringing out a striking scene of residual red. Before they could shout, the plain-clothed figure walked past. Behind him, 2 figures fell to the ground with a thud. Blood overflowed and dyed the ground red. Ning Chen walked into Marquis Qingyuan Fu and turned to close the door. Rumble, thunder descended and the night sky brightened. Before the manor door closed, the lightning reflected a pair of ice-cold eyes, like an azura. The gentleness of the past could no longer be seen. The manor door closed and the figure that flashed by was like a death god. In the manor, the patrolling imperial guards did not have time to react. They only felt a sweet taste in their mouth and their consciousness quickly blurred. Above the 9th heaven, dark clouds rolled. The night covered all the darkness and evil, making it difficult for people to see clearly. Under the night sky, the extremely fast saber brought out a waterfall of dazzling blood. From the front hall to the backyard, wherever it went, blood flowed like a river. Ah! Suddenly, an ear-piercing scream resounded in Marquis Qingyuan Fu. The lantern in a young woman's hand fell. Looking at the corpses in front of her, her face was filled with fear.